Hogwarts, forbidden son of the Black and White Lord. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76, Training Room Layout and Unlucky Ron. Looking at the silent Draco, Augustus patted him on the shoulder and said encouragingly, "Don't be so nervous, Draco. You are usually too lazy. I believe you can do it if you work hard." Well, now we have to go to a place where we can train other guys' magical abilities. I don't want Professor Snape to trouble the two of us because we didn't complete the task. After speaking, Augustus continued to read silently in his heart, facing the bare wall above. "I need a place to practice magic combat." After repeating this 3 times, the gorgeous gate reappeared on the wall. This time Draco didn't look very surprised, but followed Augustus silently and took the notebook and recording pen in his hand in advance. The two pushed the door and entered, and what they saw was a huge room, which was very empty. Only a few old pulley-type training robots were placed there. However, the tiles around the house seemed to be specially made, and each of them could reflect the reflection of people like a mirror. Augustus walked over and touched these tiles with his hands. There was a cold feeling in the hand, like polished metal, but Augustus clearly felt a powerful magical reaction on these tiles. So Augustus opened his left hand and signaled Draco next to him to step back, then took out his Elder Wand, pointed at the tiles in front of him, and read aloud. "Defindo falling apart." A strong white flash emanated from the tip of the wand and quickly hit the tiles in front of him, but the expected strong explosion did not happen, and the spell was absorbed by the wall in front of him. Ripples appeared on the mirror-like wall, like a boulder thrown into a calm lake, and the violent magical energy was absorbed by the wall in front of it. Augustus nodded when he saw the scene. It seems that the room can fully meet his requirements. This is the best place to train magic in Hogwarts. Draco was very shocked by what happened just now. He walked slowly to the wall, touched the tile in front of him in disbelief, then turned his head and looked at Augustus in surprise. "Don't be so surprised, Draco. It seems to be about the same as I expected. This place is enough for us to carry out strong spell training. Next, write down what I said. We need to add some training items." Looking at the surprised Draco, Augustus shrugged indifferently and said slowly. Hearing this, Draco immediately recovered from the shocked expression, took the pen and paper that had been prepared, and put on a look of being on call at any time. "The curtains and flags mentioned just now must be hung in this place, and there is no need for fragile items such as crystal chandeliers. After all, strict magic training is required here. Of course, the most important thing is to buy enough white meat, bandages, and some simple medical facilities. After all, it is very necessary to ensure the safety of your classmates who may be injured during the training process." After saying this, Augustus shrugged and turned around to leave, while Draco, who was recording at the side, had a dark face. Because from the words of his own chief, Draco could already foresee that for a long time to come, the students of Slytherin House would go through a period of inhumane darkness, and of course they must include himself. But looking at the ring already worn on the little finger of his left hand, Draco still gave himself a heartbeat and left the room of requirement with Augustus with firm steps. The two people who left the room of requirement walked towards the dormitory of Slytherin College. After all, there are still a lot of things to do to prepare. But walking on the road, Augustus and Draco saw Professor Snape moving a folding bed and coming towards them aggressively. When he first saw the two of Augustus, Professor Snape stopped his footsteps, looked them up and down, and said coldly, "Mr. Augustus, your speech in the common room was brilliant, but I hope you didn't mean that you promised me glory for Slytherin. I hope you can keep your promise, so that the group of wastes can have a long memory, and it is best to improve their magic level like trolls. Of course there is also Mr. Malfoy. As the chief assistant, you hope to fulfill your duties. You'd better not let me down, otherwise you will clearly know why I'm called the Master of Potions." After finishing speaking, without waiting for the two to explain anything, he continued to move the simple folding bed, bypassing the two, and hurriedly walked towards his office. Regarding Professor Snape's daily threats, Augustus and the two expressed emotional stability. After all, this is the biggest feature of Slytherin House, which belongs to the unique care of Slytherin House. If the dean of his family suddenly started to care about him one day, then there would be a real problem. However, the two were still very curious about Professor Snape's behavior. Draco was even more excited. After obtaining Augustus's consent, he quickly walked to other students and began to ask Professor Snape why he behaved like this. In fact, Augustus was also very curious about Professor Snape's weird behavior, so Augustus stood where he was, waiting for Draco to find out the truth of the good thing. After about 5 minutes, Draco, who was full of smiles, walked towards Augustus enthusiastically, and before he came to Augustus, he began to speak loudly. "That bastard boy of the wheel eyes, he's going to be out of luck by now, you know, just now." Listening to Draco's vivid narration, Augustus probably understood what was going on, and after Harry found him this morning, he really followed the method Augustus said. Putting on women's clothes again, he went to ask Professor Snape to intercede. Everything was as Augustus expected when Harry told that he couldn't sleep normally because of Ron's work. Professor Snape really felt sympathetic. Although he was a little reluctant, he still told Harry that he could change jobs for Mr. Weasley, but he didn't want to shorten the punishment time for Ron. In this case, Harry has actually achieved his goal, and he is worthy of Ron, but Harry still wants to continue pleading for Ron, hoping that Professor Snape can reduce Ron's punishment time. But obviously his words couldn't impress Professor Snape, so Harry had to change his method, and kept telling Professor Snape how kind Ron was to him, how he was his best friend, and so on. This time it hit the muzzle of the gun. The last thing Professor Snape wants to see is that Harry's best friend is a Gryffindor. The angry Professor Snape changed his mind again, saying that if Harry couldn't sleep peacefully because of Ron's work, then he can arrange for Ron to sleep in the studio, and then politely invite Harry out. And finally there is the scene that Augustus and Draco saw. For all this happened, Augustus was surprised but not surprised. After all, Harry was only an 11-year-old child, and he still had no way of understanding how to advance and retreat in an orderly manner. Draco looked very happy. If you want to say that the person Draco despises the most in Hogwarts, it must be Ron Weasley. In Draco's eyes, Ron is simply a complete waste. "I can't do anything. I can't eat anything. My brothers are obviously very good, but I'm a complete waste. I don't know how to make progress, and I'm very jealous." So seeing Ron's unlucky, Draco looked very happy. The exhaustion that had just been squeezed by Augustus disappeared without a trace in an instant, and he walked briskly towards his bedroom. Chapter 77 Acting Principal. Time flies, and it's January 1st. Today is the last day of the Christmas holiday. The next semester's course teaching will start tomorrow. Other students who are still enjoying the holiday at home will basically return to school today. At noon, the Hogwarts Great Hall, which seemed a little empty during the holidays, became full of people, and crowded with people, because of the end of the holiday. Everyone in Gryffindor was discussing the wonderful snowball fight and the even more exciting Hogwarts brawl. Most of them were concerned about the deducted college points and 1 month's obligation. Labor doesn't care. On the contrary, I'm very proud of being able to defeat Slytherin House in a head-on conflict. Only Miss Beaver, who has just returned to school, is very angry that her hard-earned house points have been deducted for no reason. I ate lunch silently by myself, exuding the aura of not being close to strangers all over my body. Slytherin College is completely different. The students are either wearing bandages or band-aids on their faces. Originally, this kind of skin trauma is very easy to heal. But Professor Snape asked them to remember this failure, and they were not allowed to use magical potions to treat the wounds. So all the injured students could only wait for the wounds to heal naturally. Of course, the students in Slytherin House are also discussing another matter enthusiastically about Mr. Ron Weasley, and the speaker is our dear Mr. Draco Malfoy. Draco was surrounded by a circle of students from Slytherin House, and Draco in the middle was talking and dancing about the embarrassing things about Ron recently. It turned out that just yesterday, Ron, who was forced by Professor Snape to live in the potion treatment room, accidentally knocked over the container containing the swollen caterpillar liquid while sleeping at night. Because the room was too small, As a result, the foul-smelling liquid splashed all over Ron's body, and the small space allowed the gas to spread rapidly. Poor Ron was stunned in the room like this. Still this morning, Mr. Filch, who was cleaning, smelled an unpleasant stench, and found the potion treatment room through the smell. It is said that the moment Mr. Filch opened the door, a solid yellow-brown stench rushed towards his face, which almost made Mr. Filch faint on the spot. Poor Ron tried to open the door to escape while he was in a coma. He was still holding the handle on the door with his left hand, but the stench was so terrible that he hadn't had time to open the room. The door is already fainted. Because of this incident, a rare quarrel broke out between Professor McGonagall and Professor Snape, but what was rare was that Professor Snape didn't make any concessions, but said sarcastically, "You said he was a child, and admitted it to me, but you have to be clear. He is the #1 person responsible for the biggest vicious incident that Hogwarts has seen in the millennium." Originally, 4 days ago, as the acting headmaster of Hogwarts, I could have completely expelled him. It was because of his age that I gave him a chance to reform himself, but I never expected that he would. Even such a simple job can't be done well. Hearing Professor Snape's words, Professor McGonagall's tone was obviously a lot weaker, but he still insisted on speaking. "Anyway, every child has his own advantages. We can't impose our own standards on the child, and this matter is too dangerous. If it is not discovered this morning, his life will be in danger. Severus." Regarding Professor McGonagall's answer, Professor Snape expressed great disdain and retorted, "Danger? It's just some foul-smelling non-toxic gas. Even if he is locked in that room for a whole day, his life will not be in any danger. As a professor, how could I put my students in danger? Also, you said that every child has merits. I don't deny this, but I don't see even a little sparkle in Mr. Weasley. If you can list one, I can change the punishment for him." Way. After hearing this, Professor McGonagall immediately wanted to refute, but he froze in place for a long time, and finally he could only reply stammeringly, "At least he has a good appetite. Although I can't find other arguments, I still stick to my point of view." Professor Snape didn't respond to Professor McGonagall's weak rebuttal, and turned away to end the conversation. Just now, the entire Slytherin house is full of joy. After all, everyone respects Professor McGonagall very much. One of the reasons is of course, that Professor McGonagall is fair and rigorous. The most important point is that Professor McGonagall almost remember the virtues of all. Even Professor McGonagall couldn't tell Ron's good points, which showed how bad Ron was in everyone's impression. Augustus keenly caught a detail. He pushed away the crowd, came to Draco, and asked seriously, "You said Professor Snape said he was acting headmaster, so where did Headmaster Dumbledore go?" Facing Augustus's sudden question, Draco was obviously stunned for a moment, but soon recovered from the state of his hippie smile just now, and answered seriously, "I'm not very clear about this, Chief. I also heard from those senior students who have been secretly inquiring about the news. They did hear the conversation between Snape and Professor McGonagall. Professor Snape claimed to be the acting headmaster. As for the specific reason, I don't know, but Chief, if you want to investigate, I can mobilize some members of the study meeting to help you investigate the truth. After all, this is not something that will be covered up." Hearing Draco's answer, Augustus couldn't help but fell into deep thought. There were so many things these days that he suddenly realized that his dear grandfather had not appeared in his field of vision for more than 10 days. Since I received the package from Austria that Christmas, I haven't seen him again. It seems that receiving this gift is not easy, and it may involve my mysterious life experience. Thinking of Augustus, he took out the necklace of the Deathly Hallows from his bosom. The whole body of the necklace was made of magic mithril, with mysterious magic lines engraved on it, and 2 magic spells were solidified inside. One is a powerful tracking spell, which can locate the person wearing the necklace, and the other is a powerful summoning spell. As long as the wearer enters magic into the necklace, a huge summoning spell can be triggered. However, Augustus is not very clear about the specific situation, but he still wears the necklace on himself every day because he wants to use his tricks to see if he can lure out the people behind the scenes. No need, there is nothing to investigate. We have more important things to do now. After lunch, bring all the students of Slytherin House and students from other houses who actively signed up to participate in this training to come to the training place. In the afternoon, I will conduct a simple test on you and see if anyone is qualified to enter our organization. After recovering from his thoughts, Augustus put the necklace back into his arms, said to Draco slowly, got up and left the long table in Slytherin, and went to set up the venue first. Meanwhile, in Austria, thousands of miles away, near Mengard Castle, looking at the majestic castle in front of him, Dumbledore had mixed feelings in his heart. After many inquiries in the past few days, Dumbledore was basically sure that his own had left the castle in front of him. This made Dumbledore have to come here to confirm it in person. After passing through the wide square and coming to the entrance of the castle gate, Dumbledore still couldn't help but look up. For the greater good. Although the handwriting has been mottled with the passage of time, after seeing these words again, Dumbledore couldn't help but feel rippling again. He sighed deeply and walked slowly into the castle. Go. Chapter 78 The Tower in the Dream. Looking at the continuously rising stairs under his feet, Dumbledore's thoughts could not help drifting back to the past. In fact, according to the agreement between the two of them, he was on the day he found Augustus. It should come to this high tower to complete the agreement between the two of them, but Dumbledore did not do this, partly because Dumbledore still cannot fully believe the prophecy made by Grindelwald. But the most fundamental reason is that Dumbledore is afraid in his heart. Even though he is called the greatest white wizard of this century, with countless glory and praise, this strongest wizard in the eyes of ordinary people still feels afraid in his heart. This kind of fear is completely different from the emotion of facing a strong enemy and fear. It comes from the softest place in my heart, and it is a feeling of fear of dreams coming true. Even in countless nights, Dumbledore had fantasized about meeting him again, but when he actually set foot on the steps of this castle, fear took the main place in his heart. Sure enough, the process of chasing dreams is always exciting, but when dreams come true, people don't know how to deal with them. With the extension of his thoughts, Dumbledore finally finished walking the long stairs and came to the highest point of the entire castle. The bitter cold wind blew into the house through the window from the mountains, blowing Dumbledore's long beard got to fly around. It's really his character. He always likes to stay in these places where he can keep his head clear. Dumbledore couldn't help sighing when he saw the room as neat and tidy as a military dormitory. Dumbledore scanned around with his eyes, but he didn't find that very familiar, but slightly unfamiliar figure, so he had no choice but to say, "It seems that I'm still late," and he seems unwilling to wait any longer. After speaking, a look of disappointment appeared on the old face. Dumbledore sighed deeply, turned around and wanted to leave this place where he only dared to set foot after mustering great courage. "You always come so slowly and always miss what you want, Mr. Dumbledore." A crisp female voice dispelled Dumbledore's idea of leaving. Dumbledore suddenly turned his head and looked at the source of the voice. His eyes were full of surprise and a hint of imperceptible anger. Seeing the surprise and anger in Dumbledore's eyes, the old witch who was in the shadows slowly came out of the shadows with an intriguing smile on her face. Looking at the witch with extraordinary temperament in front of her, even though the years have left mottled marks on her face ruthlessly, the extraordinary temperament and powerful aura made Dumbledore recognize the person in front of her at a glance who, observing the smile on the other party's face, Dumbledore spoke with difficulty. "Ms. Rosier, it seems that your dream has finally come true. Then I should leave this place. Put away your hypocrisy and your shameless thoughts. The master has never done anything to apologize to you," Rosier said coldly. Seeing the wonderful expression on Dumbledore's face, Rosier felt extremely happy, and the joy he felt today even surpassed the day when he received the news that his master had come out of the mountain again. As far as the degree of hating Dumbledore is concerned, everyone in the magic world will think that Grindelwald hates Dumbledore the most, but everyone is wrong. Grindelwald has never hated Dumbledore, not even a little bit. The person who hates Dumbledore the most is her, Rosier, the stinky old man in front of her who seized her love with a knife and made all her years of hard work come to naught. He ruined the career she fought for, and even more so, stolen the love of her life. For countless nights, Rosier had fantasized that his master could come out of the mountain again, stand by their believer's side again, and return to his side again. However, he never expected that the first task his master gave him after he came out of the mountain was to let him play him in this prison, so as to prevent the group of trash from the Austrian Ministry of Magic from discovering the reality that his master had left. Of course, the most important point is to wait for Dumbledore's arrival here and tell him where the master is going. Although Wenderozia was extremely reluctant to this task, as a senior saint and Grindelwald's most steadfast follower, Ms. Rosia still took on this task that made her feel extremely disgusting. According to the agreement between you and the master, you should have come here a long time ago, but you have broken your promise, Mr. Dumbledore. Let me guess why. Is it because you are afraid? You are afraid to see the master again. You are afraid that the master will take away everything you have now. You are afraid that the master will leave you because of this. What a pathetic coward. Looking at the somewhat bewildered old man in front of her, Ms. Wenderozia felt sincerely happy. Her long experience in dealing with all kinds of people allowed her to see what the person in front of her was thinking at a glance. Facing the questioning of the lady in front of him, Dumbledore wanted to speak many times, but he could only remain silent. HMPH. You are indeed a coward, Mr. Dumbledore. No matter how much honor and praise you have, no matter how noble others think of you, you are just a coward who cannot face your own heart. You always emphasize to others how great the power of love is, but what about you? Where is your love? You don't even have the courage to face him. Looking at Dumbledore, who had been silent all this time, Wenderozia felt amused and annoyed, and furiously reprimanded with full firepower. Ms. Rosia's angry voice kept echoing in the empty castle, but the imaginary intense dialogue did not happen, and was replaced by an unbearable silence. After Ms. Rosia's voice disappeared in the castle fell into a deathly silence. Only the cold wind outside the window was still roaring violently. This is what he left for you. After reading it, you should know where to go. After a brief silence, Ms. Rosia took out an exquisite envelope, handed it to Dumbledore, who had been silent all this time, and then said silently. The tone was full of unwillingness. In fact, Ms. Rosia was already ready for a big fight today, and even in the few days of free time, she carefully considered a few points escape route. But Dumbledore's silence turned all these preparations into useless work, which made Rosia feel extremely unwilling. Why can't I get what I want after working so hard? The dead old man in front of me doesn't have to do anything, but can get the most precious things. Thank you. Hearing the other party's unwilling words, and seeing the solidified anger on the other party's face, Dumbledore struggled for a long time, and could only speak slowly. You're welcome. We should never say this word between the two of us. As for the rest, after you meet the master, talk to him yourself, and get out of our territory now. A word of thanks completely broke the elegant image that Wenderozia had been trying to maintain. She took out her wand, and yelled at Dumbledore hysterically, and a spell knocked Dumbledore out of the high tower. Dumbledore, who was in free fall in the air, waved his hand, and an invisible force supported him to slowly land on the square of the castle. Dumbledore, who landed on the square, took a deep look at the high tower of the castle, then put the letter in his hand into his arms, and called out his phoenix, and left the high mountain castle. Chapter 79. The magic experiment begins. For the students of Hogwarts, the Forbidden Forest is a terrible forbidden land. There are countless strange and magical animals in it, and there are even bloodthirsty and poisonous eight-eyed spiders. Except for the adventurous light winds, other students are generally more reluctant to go to the restricted area over there, not to mention that for a week, there have always been all kinds of strange flames and violent explosions in the depths of the Forbidden Forest. For students of other colleges, this is just another topic of conversation after dinner, but for students of Slytherin House, this is even more irrelevant. For more than a week, the only thing that the students of Slytherin House considered was how to survive Professor Snape's perverted magic training. Originally, Augustus's training method was relatively gentle. Because of his own violent magic power, Augustus has long studied the change of the nature of magic power in order to allow himself to cast relatively peaceful magic. During the long-term research process, Augustus discovered that everyone's magic power actually has its own good side. To put it bluntly, everyone's magic power has its own characteristics. Some people are good at attacking, some are good at defending, and some good at healing. So on the afternoon of January 1st, Augustus took them to the room of requirement and conducted a simulated test on each of them to find out what they are best at. Thus, a whole set of training mode was developed, and they were asked to work in groups of 3 for team training. Regarding the membership criteria of the Saints Association, Augustus raised 7 walls of fire in the room of response, and said that anyone who can break through the 7 walls of fire with his own spell can enter the Saints Association and become a full member. If you are a person who is good at defensive or healing magic, you need to cooperate with others to defeat a fierce sapphire dragon released by Augustus. In the test on the first day, only Cedric D from Hufflepuff Gory barely penetrated 1 walls of fire alone. Most of the other outstanding performers are senior students. Among the first year students, only Draco and Hermione managed to break through 3 fire walls. Because Draco had his own help, Augustus was not surprised by this, but Hermione was able to break through 3 walls of fire, which really surprised Augustus, and he could only sigh secretly in his heart. As expected, he is the strongest student at Hogwarts. For the attitude of joining the Saints, the students of Slytherin College are very active, while the students of other colleges are mostly not interested. Most of them came for the fame of Augustus, and most of them just wanted to learn magic from Hogwarts geniuses, and didn't want to join any organization. Most of them think that Augustus is very strong, and they have all seen the super powerful magical energy, but worship does not mean belief, and no one wants to change something in a peaceful age. Augustus was not surprised by this situation. After all, in peacetime, most people would be the silent majority. They only wanted to live a stable life, and did not hope that there would be any major reforms in society. But this state of balance cannot last forever. When Augustus has decided to create a storm in the magical world, everyone will inevitably be involved in that storm. At that time, my organization will be like Noah's Ark in the flood, and there will naturally be countless people who want to join in. Originally, after the test, according to Augustus' plan, everyone in Slytherin would have the ability to deal with the flame giant in a month's time, but this plan was ruthlessly rejected by Professor Snape. If it weren't for that ignominious defeat, maybe this group of bastards has that level of magic enough, but in order to regain the glory of Slytherin, such magic training is far from enough. Okay, Mr. Dumbledore, thank you for finding such a suitable place for training, but you don't need to worry about the rest. You just need to come every day to follow my request and cast your magical fire magic, that's it. When Augustus just proposed the plan, Professor Snape pushed open the door of the room of requirement, walked in hurriedly, scanned the audience with his falcon-like eyes, and then said coldly. After speaking, Professor Snape took out a huge bookshelf from his magic sleeve, placed it next to the door of the room of requirement, and then frantically took out all kinds of potion bottles and filled the whole bookshelf. Looking at the red and blue potions on the entire bookshelf, the faces of the senior students quickly collapsed. They are too familiar with this potion. I thought that after the Christmas holiday, Professor Quirrell returned to the position of Professor of Defense against the Dark Arts, and he might never see that cute and hateful magic potion again in his life. But he never expected that his professor moved his terrible potion to this place again. Looking at a group of senior students with mournful faces, Professor Snape continued coldly. Students from other colleges can leave if they don't want to train. All the students of Slytherin House will come here for 2 hours of magic training after dinner every night. The specific training content will be decided by me. The ultimate goal is that all of you need to defeat the fierce dragon released by Mr. Dumbledore just now. Of course, I will fully guarantee your safety. Choose. As soon as the words fell, the students from other colleges ran out of the room of requirement like crazy, as if there were some terrible monsters in the room, and even Hermione, who claimed to love learning the most, was frightened by Professor Snape saw her escape. Of course, Augustus was politely invited out by Professor Snape, and he was only asked to come to the room of requirement after dinner every day and cast a fire spell designated by Professor Snape. Augustus expressed his full support for Professor Snape taking over the training. After all, why not do it if someone helps you with your work? So Augustus has a lot of free time this week. You can come to the Forbidden Forest to develop your own forbidden alchemy and magic. As for Augustus' territory in the Forbidden Forest, Augustus obtained it with a battalion of Soviet light weapons and equipment in exchange for the centaur. With human light weapons, the centaurs no longer have to be afraid of the invasion of the eight-eyed spiders. The centaurs with AK-47 and RPG are now frantically chasing and killing the eight-eyed spiders in the depths of the Forbidden Forest to avenge their bloody revenge over the years. For Augustus' behavior, Hagrid still has some criticisms. After all magical animals are cute to him, but when Augustus promises that he will get some rare magical animals for Hagrid this summer vacation biological time, Hagrid compromised, saying that as long as the centaurs don't drive out the eight-eyed spiders, he can still accept it reluctantly. So in the depths of the Forbidden Forest, there will be dada gunshots from time to time, which has become a Hogwarts phenomenon. Great features. Of course, this has nothing to do with Augustus. What he is doing now is an alchemy experiment that can change the fate of the wizarding world. If the experiment is successful, then he will be qualified to negotiate on the same status as the wizarding world in the Muggle world. Of course, the premise is that he can integrate the entire magic world so as to obtain the representative qualification of the entire magic world. Standing on a big tree, Augustus took out his gold pocket watch to check the time, then looked up at the sky, then took out his elderberry wand and pointed it at the four huge metal. The rod is infused with vast amounts of magical energy. The complicated magic pattern on the metal rod lights up, and a powerful magic defense cover is completed. Looking at the completed magic defense cover, Augustus nodded and took out a notebook to record. 1990 to 1247, 596010. Chapter 80, The Fall of the Stars. After finishing the recording, Augustus couldn't help but sigh in his heart when he saw the huge pothole in the depths of the Forbidden Forest in front of him. It's really a terrifying and destructive force. But he quickly recovered his composure, turned on the timing mode of the pocket watch, and started a 1-minute countdown, and took out a pair of anti-radiation sunglasses that Malfoy bought in the Muggle world from his pocket, and slowly put them on own eyes, and fly down from the tree to carefully check the situation of the magic shield again. After all, the power of this magic is too great if there is a problem with the shield. Maybe when all the students wake up tomorrow morning, they will find that the Forbidden Forest that has accompanied them for many years has completely disappeared on the map, so there must be no mistakes. After checking all the details, Augustus flew back to the branch just now and continued to look at the gold pocket watch in his hand. The second hand had already run more than half of the distance, and there were only 15 small gaps left. 0. Watching the pointer of the pocket watch in his hand continue to fly, Augustus also began to imitate with great interest the plot that can often be seen in movies in his previous life. Slowly read aloud with the swing of the pointer to start the countdown. 10,987,654,321. As the last number was read out, the speeding pointer finally returned to 0, and Augustus immediately pressed a small indicator that he had been holding with his hand. As the button was pressed, the sky above the head began to roar, and a shining object fell rapidly to the ground, as if it was another star attracted by the Earth's gravity. The object was traveling so fast that its bright light formed a line across the sky, cutting the dark sky in half. The object's extremely high speed and unstoppable power quickly fell in front of Augustus. When it touched the ground, the sun seemed to rise above the ground again. Through high-quality anti-radiation sunglasses and the filtering effect of the magic shield, Augustus was able to witness it with his own eyes. A huge plasma fireball rose rapidly in the center, where the object was in contact with the ground. The ultra-high temperature evaporated everything around it, and the dazzling light emitted was like the sun falling to the ground. The powerful kinetic energy shockwave and huge thermal energy radiation crazily impacted the magic shield made by Augustus. You must know that the area surrounded by these four metal rods is a full square kilometer. However, the powerful energy is still like an unstoppable tsunami, crazily submerging everything that can be seen, and finally set off huge waves like a huge wave hitting a dam. Continuous ripples were knocked out of the entire magic barrier. You must know that this magic shield can be regarded as the strongest protective force in the magic world. This is the super level magic that Augustus was able to cast using his unique alchemy magic and super strong magic power reserve. Just one magic cast consumed Augustus' full 30-day magic power reserve, which is quite based on the mana reserves of 60 auras. Looking at the ever-increasing cracks on the magic defense cover, Augustus couldn't help but worry. If the magic defense cover couldn't withstand the powerful force, then Hogwarts would probably have to re-establish the school in another place. With the passage of time, the expected terrible scene did not happen. The huge plasma fire group slowly dissipated, and the slight ground vibration caused by the shock wave also gradually calmed down as time passed down. After more than an hour, the magic shield finally stopped producing any reaction, which indicated that the energy in it had completely calmed down. Looking at the pitch black cracked earth and the constantly churning magma, a miserable doomsday scene appeared in front of Augustus. What a terrifying power. This group of wizards who have been huddled in the shadows thought that muggles are as weak as before, but they are just a bunch of waste who need to do everything by themselves. But the long-term self-enclosure and conservatism make it impossible for them to imagine what kind of terrifying power muggles possess, enough to destroy the entire world. Looking at the miserable scene in front of him, Augustus couldn't help sighing. In fact, ever since he came to the wizarding world, Augustus knew that this group of arrogant wizards would one day lose completely in the competition with muggles. In the end, this group of people with magic will be driven to extinction by a group of people without magic, or they will find a darker ditch and continue to lurk as a stinky rat in the shadows. As a result, it became more closed and xenophobic, and finally ended up in the end of fending for itself. However, from the moment he knew his identity as a wizard, Augustus had to find a way out for the entire wizarding group. After all, his ass determines his head, and his identity as a wizard must require him to stand on the side of the wizarding group. However, the process of integrating the entire wizarding community must be full of difficulties, and there will inevitably be serious conflicts with various conservative forces, and these conflicts are likely to lead to the early exposure of the magical world. Therefore, to plan ahead, Augustus had to develop a super magic at this stage. When the magic world was exposed to the world in advance due to its own turmoil, he had enough deterrent power to prevent the war between muggles and wizards break out early. If it comes to deterrence, then the muggle world has provided enough examples. What is more deterrent than the three forces of truth on this planet? When it came to implementation, Augustus certainly couldn't create a nuclear bomb by himself, but he possessed magical powers that muggles didn't have, which gave him the opportunity to turn some of muggles' previous ideas into reality. The Rod of God, the American idea in the late 80s, inspired Augustus. It is essentially a space-based kinetic energy weapon system. It is a huge tungsten rod carried by a satellite. Through the gravity of the Earth itself, it can obtain a huge kinetic energy damage effect during the free fall process, which is comparable to a nuclear bomb. The reason why this project cannot be implemented is that the tungsten rod will have violent friction with the air during the free fall process, which will cause violent combustion and automatic disintegration when flying into the atmosphere. There is also a key technical problem, that is, this thing cannot be precisely aimed. Although it is a weapon of mass destruction, at least the accuracy of aiming must reach the city level. Otherwise, after the satellite flies over the city, the next launch will be after waiting a full 24 hours. However, these technical problems that cannot be solved by human technology are not a problem for magic. For the problem of air friction resistance, a large iron armor spell can be engraved on a tungsten rod through alchemy. Therefore, when the tungsten rod flies into the atmosphere, a protective force field is formed around the tungsten rod to solve the problem of air friction. As for the guiding problem, Augustus is now trying to solve this problem. After all, Augustus' request is definitely not the size of a city. Deterring muggles must be one of the goals of this experiment, but one is not the only one after all. It is a pity that such a powerful magic is only used for deterrence. What Augustus wants to do is a sword of Damocles hanging over everyone's heads. It is the last trump card to deal with some powerful opponents after he sets off a storm in the magic world in the future. Waiting for the magic shield to gradually dissipate, Augustus took out his Elder Wand and used a simple meteorological magic on the scorched land. The clouds quickly gathered, and rain fell one after another, forced cooling of the land. While everything was in order, Augustus suddenly felt a familiar feeling, turned his head to face the shadow deep in the forbidden forest behind him, and said slowly, "I enjoyed watching it very much. This is an unusual magic performance. Shouldn't you come out and give the performers some applause?" Chapter 81 I'm your father too. The young man's crisp voice echoed in the silent forbidden forest, as if there was no living creature in the whole world except Augustus. Only the raindrops under the magic cloud made a beeping beep when they hit the ground, the sound of. Looking at the empty environment and the darkness deep in the forbidden forest, Augustus couldn't help but wonder if he felt wrong because of being overly nervous. But soon this idea was strongly rejected by Augustus. He clearly felt two kinds of strong magic fluctuations. If it was only one magic fluctuation, he might have misjudged it. The simultaneous appearance of a large number of magic fluctuations meant that someone must be secretly observed. It seems that my audience doesn't want to give me the applause I deserve, so I have to use some slightly rough methods to get you off this viewing platform. After all, there is no free lunch in the world. Augustus, who had made up his mind, held his elder wand and said slowly to the dark place deep in the forbidden forest, "Crack, clap, clap." As soon as the words fell, a burst of loud applause slowly came from the shadows, and two well-dressed old men walked slowly from the shadows to the open space that had just been swept by magic. Under the dim moonlight, the two old men and Augustus looked at each other. The two old men in front of him were wearing exquisite handmade suits, but the accessories on their bodies and the iconic breeches allowed Augustus to basically determine that the two people opposite them were not British. They should be from Germany or Austria. Wait for the Central European countries to come. Moreover, the relationship between the two is obviously a master-servant relationship. The little old man on the right is younger. From his facial features, it can be seen that he should have been a handsome guy when he was young, but he looks a little wretched because of his old age and bald head. The one on the left is much more energetic, with short silver hair and a trimmed beard, making the whole person look very shrewd and capable, with a sharp-edged face and exquisite facial features. Even though the years have done a lot of erosion, still looks very handsome. The most important thing is his eyes. Like Augustus, the other party also has a different colored pupil. The difference is that Augustus's different colored pupil is on his left, while the other party's is on the right. Augustus's different colored pupils are golden, like melting gold, or like the rising sun, but the other party's different colored pupils are silver, like the thick fog when he wakes up in the morning, or like the hidden stars in the sky. This person has a very familiar feeling, and this feeling, only when Augustus stays beside Dumbledore, will he feel it vaguely. It is a feeling of blood connection. Thinking of this, Augustus couldn't help asking, the two of you should not be British, and it is even more unlikely that you are someone from Hogwarts that I don't know. You sneaked into the most dangerous place in Hogwarts in this dark night. I'm afraid that you are not just here to watch a magic show. Yes. Hearing this, the handsome old man smiled lightly and then praised wildly. As expected, I guessed correctly. My prediction will eventually come true. I have been waiting for this moment for more than 40 years. A great era is about to begin. The ideal that I was unable to realize. Finally, because of your appearance, in the dark night of reality, there appeared a star that enlightened the direction. As the impassioned words fell, the handsome old man continued to stare at Augustus with his own eyes. The bold old man next to him looked like a believer who had seen God, knelt down on the ground, and raised his hands above his head, as if Augustus stood as the most holy and supreme God. Looking at the two old men performing performance art in front of him, Augustus' cheeks twitched involuntarily, and then said coldly, "Stop talking about your fanatical words, any prophecies, any ideals. I don't care about all of your things, and immediately reveal your identities and intentions. Otherwise I will really send you to see God." After speaking, Augustus aimed his elder wand at the two old men who were still performing performance art in front of them. Seeing the threatening action of the young man in front of him, the handsome old man smiled dismissively and said slowly, "For more than 40 years, even though I have been self-imprisoned for such a long time, in the more than 10 days since I left that cage, no one has ever raised a magic wand to me. You are the first one." Stupefied, passed out. Facing the self-boasting of the old man in front of him, Augustus didn't bother to talk nonsense with them. If there was any problem, he would talk about it after the fight. Before the other party finished speaking, Augustus directly fired a spell. The white beam of light hit the two of them, and when it was about to hit, the handsome old man just waved his hand, and a golden magic barrier appeared in front of the two of them, blocking the curse that was about to hit. Looking at the opponent's actions, Augustus' heart couldn't help sinking. You must know that due to the nature of magic, the offensive spells you fire are far stronger than the offensive spells fired by ordinary people. Not to mention that it is completely unstoppable, but it requires a very high level of defensive magic to block it. The opponent just waved his hand, neither chanting a spell nor using a wand, and he was able to release such a high level of defensive magic. It seems that the other party is not simple. Is it very powerful? I have never heard of it. Apart from my grandfather Albus Dumbledore, there is also a powerful wizard like you. It seems that I can't let the two of you go, Augustus said slowly, and then continued to wave his wand. This blow must take down the opponent directly, or at least trap the opponent here, waiting for the support of Hogwarts. Protego Diabolica Fire Shield Body. Augustus, who already knew the opponent's details, did not hold back, and a powerful fierce fire curse surrounded the two opponents. Seeing the faint blue flames ignited around him, the handsome old man showed no fear on his face, but was very excited. He said excitedly, "As expected, you have already mastered this terrifying power. You are truly an unparalleled genius. You must be able to succeed, for sure." After finishing speaking, the handsome old man waved his hand again, and the same terrifying blue fiend fire appeared around the two of them, forcing Augustus' fiend fire back, and two powerful flames. The fierce collision sent out a terrifying temperature. "Who are you? Why is your fiend fire color exactly the same as ours?" Seeing the same faint blue fierce flame being produced by the opponent's spell, Augustus could no longer maintain a calm mood, and shouted loudly to the two people surrounded by flames. "I'm your father. I'm your father. Sorry to meet you for the first time in this way, dear son." Hearing Augustus roar, the handsome old man calmly took out a Deathly Hallows necklace from his arms, and then said slowly to Augustus with a smile. Hearing this sentence, Augustus' cheeks twitched involuntarily. It seems that the old people in the magic world like to recognize someone as their son, but seeing the necklace on the other's hand, Augustus couldn't help but believe it a little bit. Immediately, he increased his output of magic power, trying to trap the two people on the opposite side here. After all, this might be an important opportunity to unravel his life experience. Looking at the increasingly violent fiend fire around him, the handsome old man seemed very satisfied, nodded and said slowly, "You are indeed very good. Whether it is the level of use of this spell, or the powerful spell you just experimented with, you are indeed a genius, but I don't have too long to catch up with you, my son. I have another important appointment, so let's call it a day." After speaking, the other party suddenly burst out a powerful magical energy, which directly blew away the fiend fire that wanted to surround them, and then the two of them turned into a cloud of black smoke and disappeared into the vast night. Looking at the two who had already left, Augustus couldn't help scratching his head. It seemed that he was still too arrogant, and the level of the other party was far beyond his imagination, but he didn't think much about it. After all, everyone was lost. Turning around and walking towards the castle. After all, as a child, it is very necessary to ensure adequate sleep. Seeing the young man's receding back, the two people who were still hiding in the shadows deep in the forbidden forest couldn't help but fell silent. If the silence was quickly broken by the bald man, he spoke slowly. "Don't you take him away. How can we leave the hope of our witch party in the hands of that old guy Dumbledore? We should." Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by the handsome old man next to him waving his hand, and he spoke slowly. "He will stand with us in the end, Lucas. There is no doubt about it. Just look at the magic he experimented with, and he will definitely set off a great revolution in this corrupt world. Now you continue to observe his life here. As for the stinky mouse in the castle, don't worry about him. After all, the so-called second generation Dark Lord is simply useless. As for me, I need to make an appointment, which has been 46 years late. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82, Meeting Again After Half a Century. Godric's Hollow. Dumbledore's old house. Dumbledore sat in the window seat he chose every time he came back here, staring blankly out of the window, looking at the valley, where the ice and snow began to melt due to the arrival of spring. After returning from Nermengard, Dumbledore has been waiting here for almost a month according to the agreement in the letter. This may be the most relaxing month in his busy life. You must know that as the headmaster of Hogwarts and a long-term advisor to the British Ministry of Magic, Mr. Albus Dumbledore's work is very busy, at least he thinks so. However, in this month's time, he was finally able to let go of all the burdens on him, and he did not have to worry about those confusing prophecies and unpredictable so-called fate. Ananxen looked at the scenery here, and ate some desserts, to comfort her old and scarred heart. He should be here today. What will he look like? Will he be as old as me, and unable to see the style of the past? Looking at the scenery outside the window, Dumbledore muttered to himself, and then said another sentence. What should I say when I meet him at that time, is really a distressing question. In my long life, there has never been a day like today, which made this respected principal feel so much anticipation and so nervous. While Dumbledore was still thinking, a series of peaceful knocks on the door interrupted his thoughts. So Dumbledore stood up and walked slowly towards the door, not forgetting to mutter, "It's so fast, he always makes people feel so overwhelmed. Oh, dear Bathilda, long time no see, why are you free to come to my place today?" Looking at the kind-looking fat old lady in front of him, Albus Dumbledore couldn't help but flash a hint of disappointment in his eyes, but soon he greeted her enthusiastically and actively lowered his body to give her a hug. The long beard completely covered the old man in front of him. After the two separated, the old lady who was bloated due to old age carefully looked Dumbledore up and down, and then said in surprise, "Are you getting this old already? Albus, my god, you should trim that beard. Look at you now, you look much older than Gellert." Hearing this, Dumbledore couldn't help feeling a little embarrassed, but he still wanted to ask the other party some questions. But the fat old lady in front of him obviously didn't give him this opportunity, and he continued to speak the same way. "Okay, let's not talk about that. Today Gellert is back at my house. We are going to hold a small welcome ceremony. We will cook a lot of delicious food, and of course candy. He specifically asked me to come and invite you." "Okay, time is running out. You young people always wake up so late. It's only a short time before noon. Let's go. Standing for a long time is not good for the elderly." After finishing speaking, the old lady Bathilda led Dumbledore towards her house, and after walking a street away, the two came to a small house, which was a typical wizard's house, tall and extremely obsolete. "Okay, don't stand there stupidly. What's wrong with you today, Albus? Why are you always in a daze?" Looking at Albus Dumbledore, who had been standing at the door without moving, the old lady Bathilda looked very angry. He pushed the tall man in front of him with his hands, and then said bluntly. Hearing this, Dumbledore couldn't help but fell into embarrassment again, so he turned sideways quickly. The owner of the house entered first, and then walked into this room at the invitation of the other party. Just entering the house, Dumbledore looked at the interior decoration and environment of the house. Looking at the familiar environment around him, Dumbledore couldn't help but fell into deep thought again. "Sit down quickly. You are a guest. Seeing your state of mind, I have to prepare a cup of strong tea for you. You are going to eat desserts every day and your brain will be ruined." Seeing Dumbledore acting strangely, the old lady Bathilda looked really distressed, so she could only tell him to sit down slowly while talking to herself. After sitting down on the old sofa, a house elf immediately appeared in front of Dumbledore, offering a cup of steaming dark brown drink. Looking at the dark brown drink in the cup, Dumbledore struggled for a while before he took the teacup. With the mentality of trying it out, he hesitated to take a sip. The strong bitter taste almost made him throw the cup out. Just when he was hesitating how to deal with the cup of strong tea, a familiar yet unfamiliar voice came from upstairs. "Okay, Aunt. Albus won't like to drink that bitter drink. You still ask the house elf to prepare a cup of honey tea for him. Remember to add 2 tablespoons of white sugar." These slightly teasing words moved everyone's attention to the stairs, and saw an old man holding a book walking down the stairs slowly, and came to the living room, where Dumbledore and Bathilda were. The decent light-colored linen hunting suit, the spotless black mid-top leather boots, and the short light blonde hair that has been carefully cut. Now the whole person is very shrewd and capable. Proper facial features with sharp edges and corners. Routine German specific seriousness and prudence. Of course, the most special thing is the pair of heterochromatic pupils, like the stars in the sky. Charming and elegant. Looking at the handsome old man in front of him, Dumbledore froze for a moment, and the scene fell into an awkward silence. Hey, since you don't like the tea I gave you, I'll follow what Gellert said, and prepare honey tea for you. You two can talk about it separately. Seeing the two people in embarrassment, the old lady Bathilda said with a smile, and after speaking, she beckoned the house elf, and walked to the kitchen. You shouldn't be here, Gellert. The wizarding world can no longer afford any turmoil. After a long silence, Dumbledore still opened his mouth, to break the embarrassing silence. Facing the most embarrassing person in the world, he spoke with difficulty. Oh, that's what you've been trying to say to me for over 40 years, and it's heartbreaking, Albus. Facing Dumbledore's accusation, Grindelwald did not feel angry, but mocked the old man in front of him with a smile. According to our previous agreement, if the experiment is successful, you should bring our child to me instead of hiding him secretly, and continuing that ridiculous prophecy. Look at your current appearance, Albus. You are already old and out of shape, and the loss of appearance more reflects the hopelessness in your heart. You even arranged for yourself a way to leave this world. Even during this process, you didn't think of me in any of your plans. It's really sad. It seems that time has really blown away the summer flower. Looking at Dumbledore, who continued to be silent in front of him, Grindelwald seemed a little angry. He never expected that the person opposite could only treat himself with silence after seeing him. What was even more angry was that he actually removed himself from his destiny and wanted to die alone behind his back. I never thought that I would be able to see you again. I thought that the fate between me and you was already two parallel lines that would never intersect. As for the rest, I have nothing to say. Facing Grindelwald's slightly angry words, Dumbledore spoke slowly after a brief silence. Chapter 83 Fight for Custody. Hearing this, Grindelwald looked very angry. His brows were full of anger, and his calm chest rose and fell due to his violent breathing. He never expected that after more than 40 years, almost half a century, the person he thinks about day and night, the first thing he said to him when he saw him would be, "I have nothing to say." After being angry, Grindelwald felt very wronged and painful again. After waiting for so long, he even specially arranged for his aunt to invite Dumbledore to come here as a guest. I also put on the same dress that I met him for the first time, trying to restore the scene when the two met for the first time, in order to eliminate the embarrassment between the two. However, the other party's attitude towards him was either silent or casually perfunctory. It seemed that all his thoughts were in vain. But then Grindelwald felt very painful again. It seems that the passage of time and the ravages of the years have not allowed himself to be forgiven by the other party, and the other party still hates him. It seems that his fate and his fate have really become two parallel lines that can never cross again, as he said, and all the good memories are with the departure of that summer, and will always be in his own disappeared in life. Thinking of these, Grindelwald felt very unwilling, and he didn't want to give up. In the last period of his life, he still wanted to find the only sweetness in his life. But his haughty personality did not allow Grindelwald to bow his head to Dumbledore, so he said forcefully, "Okay, since you don't want to recall the past, let's talk about the current situation. Regarding the child, I will take him away." What? No, absolutely not. Augustus will have the best study and life at Hogwarts. He has gained friendship there. I won't allow you to take him away. Hearing Grindelwald's tough speech, Dumbledore instantly woke up from the silence and retorted equally tough. "Friendship? Do you think those little devils in your school, who only know how to play and fall in love, can really get the friendship of Augustus? Any relationship needs to be established on an equal footing. His current strength is comparable to that of an international aura. How can a group of little wizards who can't even cast basic spells get his friendship? Lion, will you make friends with the Hound?" As soon as Dumbledore finished speaking, Grindelwald curled his lips in disdain and continued to speak forcefully. "That's not the case. Augustus has always regarded his classmates as friends. He never regarded his classmates as the relationship between superiors and subordinates. Dumbledore retorted. So what? No matter how old his body is, he is only an 11-year-old kid now, and he just wants to help those weak people out of his own nature. But he will grow up eventually. He must be a person who creates a huge storm in the magic world. Not to mention his future is everything he does now. Don't you have any feeling? Regarding Dumbledore's words, Grindelwald still retorted disdainfully. No matter what you say, Augustus has always been a good boy. Although he is very mischievous, his heart is kind. He always comforts those who are hurt in his own way. I admit everything you said. Augustus's future achievements will definitely exceed the two of us, but like you said, he is just a child now, and he needs a good education and a loving growth environment. It's impossible for me to hand him over to you. Your methods are too extreme, Gellert. You are too superstitious about the authority brought by power. You never believe in the power that love can bring. Dumbledore continued to retort. This remark broke Grindelwald's defenses, and he fell into a rare silence. Grindelwald kept repeating in his heart the sentence that Dumbledore just said. You never believe in the power that love can bring. This sentence really hurt Grindelwald's old heart. How could he not believe in the power that love can bring? If he didn't believe in love, why would he appear here? If I don't believe in love, why have I never stepped out of the tower that imprisoned me for more than 40 years? Does the other party think that I'm willing to imprison myself for more than 40 years just because of a temporary setback? This has been more than 40 years, and countless former saints have found themselves saying that they can help Grindelwald make a comeback, and everything is ready. As long as Grindelwald walks out of the tower, he can change from a prisoner to a saint leader who dominates the entire European magic world. But he never agreed to those loyal requests, and repeatedly asked his subordinates not to attack Dumbledore, and even made up many lies by himself to deal with those aggressive questioning. I did so much in secret, but after the other party met again, he said directly, you never believe in the power that love can bring. Thinking of this, Grindelwald felt very wronged, and even more angry, so he continued to speak forcefully. Put away your self-deceiving words. I must take Augustus away. This is my right as a father, and no one can take it away. That's impossible. His current surname is Dumbledore, not Grindelwald. In the eyes of others, I'm one of his only remaining relatives in this world. You are just a stranger to him. Seeing Grindelwald say those words just now with a bit of a gaffe, Dumbledore also continued to speak tit for tat. Stranger. I'm his biological father. Most of the genes in his body come from me. If you insist on counting, you can only be her mother. And I took his first name. As for his last name, it's just to avoid some unnecessary troubles, just like his full name. Augustus Gellert Dumbledore, whose middle name is my first name, and I'm his real father. Hearing Dumbledore's tit-for-tat words, Grindelwald finally couldn't maintain his superficial calm, and yelled at Dumbledore loudly, like a child who had just been robbed of his favorite toy. Looking at Grindelwald, who lost his composure in front of him, Dumbledore couldn't help but feel a little bit of joy in his heart. In the past, in the communication between the two, he was always at a disadvantage. However, in today's conversation, I'm obviously in the upper hand. It turns out that taking the initiative is such a pleasant thing, and it seems that I cannot be passive in the future. Thinking of this, Dumbledore continued to speak persistently. Leaving aside the facts, how can you ensure that Augustus is well educated with your current status? You are now the most dangerous wanted criminal in the entire European magic world, not one of them. I can bring Augustus a good education, an excellent growing environment, and even borrow some of my personal prestige and reputation to pave the way for what he wants to do in the future. And what about you? Hearing Dumbledore's slightly mocking words, Grindelwald's cheeks kept twitching, but after thinking for a long time, he couldn't find a reason to refute the other party, so he could only say bitterly, then finally leave the choice to the child himself. After the end of the school year, I will take him away for a period of time. Don't refute. This is his right as a relative. After finishing speaking, Grindelwald turned around and walked towards the kitchen. Halfway there, he still didn't forget to turn his head and said mockingly, "You don't need your help for today's lunch, Albus. If you're bored, I've prepared a dessert for you. It's on the table behind you. Don't worry, add an extra spoonful of sugar." After speaking, he turned and left. Hearing the other party's ridicule, Dumbledore didn't feel any embarrassment. Instead, he walked to the table in a happy mood, and then there was a wave of turmoil in his happy mood just now. Because he saw a small cake, but the words on the cake touched his heart again, and he saw the words written in cream on the cake. Actually, I've been thinking of you, Albus. Chapter 84. Ever since the battle in the Forbidden Forest, Augustus felt more and more uneasy. After all, there was a Professor Quirrell in the castle, who was still pretending to be stupid. There is also a powerful wizard whose identity is unknown outside the castle, and his specific purpose cannot be ascertained, which can be described as internal and external troubles. However, in this extraordinary period, Dumbledore, as the headmaster of Hogwarts, has not returned to school. It was only a week after the war that he hurried back to school and explained some trivial matters to Professor McGonagall, and rescued Ron from Professor Snape, then left in a hurry and continued to appoint Professor Snape as the acting headmaster of Hogwarts. When others asked the reason, our principal just chirped, saying that there is a dangerous person who needs to be taken care of by himself, and some very heavy and complicated work needs to be done. Regarding his explanation, the faculty headed by Professor McGonagall certainly expressed their disbelief, but they did not say much. After all, the departure of Headmaster Dumbledore did not have any important impact on Hogwarts. Of course, Augustus expressed dissatisfaction with this situation. When Dumbledore was about to leave that day, he directly blocked his way and asked forcefully, "What is the most important thing that needs to be done by the greatest white wizard of this century? I don't believe you haven't noticed Professor Quirrell's abnormality and the battle I fought in the Forbidden Forest that day. Don't you see any clues? You let a Dark Lord wander in the castle, even if his strength has been greatly reduced. But if he insists on doing some bad things, do you think, can someone in the castle stop him?" Regarding Augustus' tough speech, Dumbledore smiled and said jokingly, "There is no way. The gear of fate has been deflected because of your appearance. All the plans I made are actually useless. Now fate has returned to the starting point. It depends on where you are going. Didn't you always emphasize that I should not be trapped in the shackles of fate? Now that I'm freed from the cage of self-imprisonment, I start to enjoy life and love life. You should be happy." Hearing Dumbledore's speech, Augustus was not confused by his words, but pointed it out sharply. "I won't believe what you said, and you are simply irresponsible. You want to push the responsibility of protecting the academy to me, because you know that out of a person's conscience, I will not allow that bug to cause harm to my classmates. You still like to play with other people's hearts, which is really annoying. What's even more suspicious is that you have started to learn how to make pastries during this period. Don't deny it, you still have flour and jam on your clothes. You said you were going to supervise an extremely dangerous person, but the traces on your body and your mood today show that you are not going to supervise at all. It is more like going on a date with an old acquaintance." Seeing Augustus pointing at his clothes while talking, Dumbledore quickly checked his clothes, and sure enough, he found some flour and jam in the corner of the clothes. Seeing these scenes, Dumbledore's usually serious face inadvertently showed an imperceptible blush, but he still said forcefully, "As the head of Slytherin House and the most outstanding genius since Hogwarts was founded, I believe you have the ability to prevent misfortune from happening. And please believe me, I'm really supervising a person who is extremely dangerous to the whole of Britain, and even the entire magic world, but the content of the job is a little bit special." For Dumbledore's stubborn behavior, Augustus also expressed helplessness, but he felt very unwilling to let him be a perfect tool man in this way, so he continued, "Okay, I believe you, my grandfather, but after all, it is not our responsibility to protect students. I'm working for you. Since it is work, it should be paid. And you also said just now that you are monitoring a person who is extremely dangerous to the entire magic world. Such a dangerous job will definitely be prone to accidents. In case something happens to you accidentally, then as the sole heir of the Dumbledore family, I should be able to inherit all your property. So I request that you pay me part of the remuneration first as a deposit. Of course, if you are willing to hand over the Dumbledore family's Gringotts golden key to me, that would be great." For this kind of blatant extortion, Dumbledore, as the greatest white wizard, of course, sternly rejected this unreasonable behavior. But Augustus was not used to him and said something directly. If you refuse to hand over the golden key to me, then I will use my phoenix to apparate to Dumbledore's old house that night, and I must reveal your secret to the public. It wasn't until hearing this threat that Dumbledore reluctantly handed over a golden key to Augustus. Seeing the golden key inlaid with jewels in his hand, the corners of Augustus' eyes couldn't help jumping up because he saw a serial number 01 engraved on the jewel. This means that this is only one of the golden keys in the Dumbledore family's vault, and the serial number 01 also means that the Dumbledore family's vault has at least 2 digits, right? My family is so rich, but everything I do now costs almost every penny I earn. As a top rich second generation, Augustus felt extremely ashamed of his behavior, so he was going to make persistent efforts to carry out his cheating behavior to the end. Before Augustus made any further moves, Dumbledore had predicted what would happen in advance. When Augustus was observing the gemstone serial number on the golden key, Dumbledore had already used his phoenix to leave here in advance. Regarding his father's stingy behavior, Augustus expressed his emotional stability. Originally, he just wanted to squeeze some oil out of this old deng today, but he didn't expect to discover such an important secret. Voldemort was not worth mentioning at all. From the moment Augustus accepted the system task, Voldemort had already been included in the death list. Augustus is going to use the blood of the most dangerous dark wizard in the history of the British magic world to cast the first puzzle that will constitute the future transformation of the magic world. At the same time, he used the truth about killing Voldemort with his own hands to dispel the retreat of the British pureblood family represented by Malfoy, and told them the retreat they thought they had. In fact, it is a majestic castle made of snowflakes. It seems indestructible and majestic, but as long as the real sun comes out, even the perfect snowflakes will melt. The top priority now is to perfect his super magic and let Professor Quirrell show his feat as soon as possible. After all, if the other party doesn't do it first, he really has no way to find a suitable reason. Thinking of this, Augustus couldn't help scratching his head again, but when he saw the golden key in his hand, his mood suddenly became cheerful, and he walked briskly towards the interior of the castle. Chapter 85. The final exam is coming. As the clock ticks, students' nightmare final exams are approaching, with only 1 week left until exams. In this last week, no matter which grade the students are in, they all start to enter into a state of frantic study in order to have a better summer vacation. Of course, the craziest ones are the 5th and 7th graders. For the 5th graders, they have a general wizard level exam waiting for them. This exam is related to whether they can successfully enter Hogwarts graduate. And for the 7th grade students, they also have an advanced wizard level exam, which will be related to their future employment. Although the number of people in the magic world is very small, and the Ministry of Magic almost employs most of the labor force, real good jobs are actually very rare. After all, for any company, the treatment of different positions in the same company is very different. If you are not good enough, even if you enter the Ministry of Magic, you can only make a living in some kingshi yamen. This is especially true for Muggle-born wizards. Almost graduating means unemployment. Although the recruitment of the Ministry of Magic will definitely adhere to the principle of political correctness and not discriminate against Muggle wizards, the reality is often the opposite of what is expected. Even if they are lucky enough to be recruited into the Ministry of Magic, these people have neither qualifications nor experience, let alone connections. They can only work as low-level civil servants in some insignificant departments for a lifetime, and almost never have a bright future. Those who did not enter the Ministry of Magic have nowhere to go, because the Muggle world does not recognize diplomas in the wizarding world. In the Muggle world, you are only a primary school graduate. How can you find a good job? This is also an important reason why Augustus wants to change the magic world. The magic world will replenish fresh blood from the Muggle world, but these people cannot return to their original world, and cannot become a bridge between the two worlds. The bridge died, and the two worlds were completely divided. But the most urgent question now is how to make Professor Quirrell reveal his feat quickly. After a long period of observation, Augustus has confirmed that Voldemort must be planning a big plan. With such a paranoid antisocial personality, it is impossible for him to give up all his plans because of one embarrassment. Think about Voldemort's perverted obsession with Harry Potter in previous life movies. He must be planning something in the dark. His behavior in the defense against the dark arts classroom last time had put him on Voldemort's blacklist, and his ranking might even be ahead of Harry Potter. Out of this consideration, Augustus had to spend a lot of money to buy a lot of precious alchemy materials, create several alchemy necklaces with powerful protective spells, and gave them to Harry and Ron. After all, I took money from the old man, and it was only natural to take money. For Augustus's gift, Harry was very happy, but Ron expressed his disdain. After being severely taught by Professor Snape, Ron has become very paranoid and has become the vanguard against Slytherin throughout Hogwarts, spreading the black material of Slytherin College everywhere. Of course, Augustus was very dissatisfied with saying that the entire Slytherin house was the cradle of dark wizards, and he tried to solve this problem gently through the channels of Harry and Hermione many times. But verbal communication didn't seem to have much effect. But as the head of Slytherin house, of course, he couldn't just sit idly by and ignore this kind of unscrupulous smearing of Slytherin house. So just before the exam week, Augustus secretly arranged for Draco and others to have another duel with the people from Gryffindor College. Everyone in Slytherin, who had been trained by Professor Snape, won a complete victory in this duel, almost all at the crushing level. In the first year battle, Draco educated Ron Hardpaws. Using the fire elemental magic taught to him by Professor Augustus, he hung Ron upside down on the ceiling of the auditorium with a flame rope for a whole day. For this time, Professor McGonagall deliberately quarreled with Professor Snape again. However, Professor Snape refuted it on the grounds that this is a contradiction between the students. The professors should not interfere too much, and Ron will not be threatened with any life. If it was normal, Professor McGonagall could forcefully order Professor Snape to put Ron down as a vice principal of the school, but because of Dumbledore's departure, Professor Snape, who became the acting principal, refused this request without any surprise. After that lesson, Ron finally closed his mouth that smeared Slytherin anytime and anywhere, and became silent. I thought that this blow would stimulate his inner self-motivation, but other than the increasing appetite, the other party really didn't see any room for improvement. Regarding Ron's childlike resentment, Augustus said that it didn't matter. The reason for giving them 2 necklaces was only as a bond between classmates and to complete the task assigned by Dumbledore. The purpose is only that, if Voldemort secretly attacks the 2 of them without realizing it, this necklace can guarantee the other's life, and the spell attached to it can instantly remind Augustus of the location of the 2 of them. After all, the one who wants to kill Voldemort is himself, and he can only be himself. After all, Voldemort is a terrible devil in the eyes of others, but in the eyes of Augustus, it is just a series of numbers that can be exchanged for items. After delivering the things, Augustus didn't communicate much with them, turned around and walked towards the Slytherin common room. After all, the final exam was coming soon. Although for Augustus, the first year magic test is simply playing a game, but as the head of the house and the leader of the Slytherin house, in addition to guaranteeing his own grades, he will ensure that more students can get better grades. The results are also my own responsibility. So during the last week here, Augustus almost stayed in the Slytherin house, tutoring all the students in the Slytherin house, and urging them to complete their review homework. During this period, Professor Snape was very busy. After all, it is impossible for all principals to be as irresponsible as a certain old bee. As the acting principal, Professor Snape still fulfilled the duties of the principal very seriously. At the same time, as the number 1 tool and the biggest villain in the world, Professor Snape also has to play the image of an evil wizard who has been coveting the treasures in the secret room from time to time in the process of performing the duties of the principal. He is really a double-faced actor. However, as the Dean of Slytherin House, Professor Snape still sent greetings to the students very thoughtfully. He brewed a lot of refreshing potions and asked that the study time must be extended until midnight and at least 15 classes a day hours or more. And all Slytherin students are required to get a grade of E, but, or above in this final exam. Otherwise they may have to make up lessons during the summer vacation. For such strict requirements and such inhuman punishment, the students of Slytherin House immediately entered a state of super learning, studying for more than 15 hours a day. Everyone is automatically divided into multiple study groups according to the mastery of the subject scores, and each other complements each other's weak subjects. After all, what Professor Snape said is that everyone must achieve. That is to say, if one person fails to meet his requirements, then the entire Slytherin house students will be punished together. Under such high intensity study, a week passed quickly. The students of the whole school have finally come to the difficulty that any student must face. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, the final exam of the 1991 school year is coming. Chapter 86 Exam in Progress. First year students at Hogwarts have to take a total of 7 subjects: Transfiguration, Charms, Potions, Defense against the Dark Arts, Herbalism, History of Magic and Astronomy. Among the 7 courses, History of Magic and Astronomy only have theoretical exams, while the other 4 subjects are all practical exams. The theory test is no pressure for Augustus. After all, he is also a man with cheating skills. Is it just talking about it? On the day before the test, Augustus spent an hour flipping through the 2 first-grade textbooks. On the day of the exam, the speed of answering the questions only depends on how fast you can write. Because it is approaching summer, the classroom is too stuffy, and Augustus, who has answered all the questions in just 10 minutes, handed in the papers in advance and left the scene. But this puts a lot of pressure on other young wizards. After all, there are many people, especially some scumbags. 10 minutes is only enough for them to scratch their heads. Individuals with a slightly higher level may have just written, "Write down your name." For this reason, Professor McGonagall, who was on the inspection tour, also specially came to check Augustus's quill. After all, there have been cases of students cheating with the magic quill. But after rigorous inspection, Professor McGonagall had to admit that there was nothing wrong with Augustus's quill. Augustus, who left early, went to several other college examination rooms on purpose. After all, as a standard scumbag in his previous life, he was often disgusted by those top students. Now, as a top student, he discovered that this feeling is really good. After one morning passed, the 2 theoretical exams were all over. As a caring brother, Augustus, of course, did not forget his little brothers, and specially set up a table outside the exam room of Slytherin College. There are all kinds of iced drinks on it to refresh the students who have gone through a whole morning of exams in hot weather. Of course, the most important reason is to satisfy Augustus's bad taste. Relying on his extraordinary memory, Augustus wrote all the answers to his exam on a piece of parchment, and then used magnification magic to enlarge it to the size of a poster, and wrote it at the beginning. After checking by the 2 professors, all the answers are correct. Everyone is welcome to come and check. For Augustus's bad taste, the students of Slytherin College expressed their emotional stability, because after the Slytherin students of the Devil's Review week, after a cursory glance at the answer, they can basically confirm that they can get a good grade or better. It's just pity for those in other colleges. On the way to the auditorium after the exam, I couldn't help my curiosity, so I had to answer my answers intermittently. One can imagine that the results were not very good. So at today's lunch, a special situation occurred. The Hufflepuffs, who were the happiest and most active in cooking, unexpectedly lost their appetite. They have lost their appeal. After the theoretical exam in the morning, there are 4 experimental operation exams in the afternoon. The practical operation test is carried out at the same time. Students can choose any subject to take the test first. As long as they complete the content of the professor's test, they can go to the next test site. This is also the reason why Hogwarts has 7 subjects, and the final exam only takes 1 day, because for students who have already learned to practice magic, the practical exam may not take them an hour. For the remaining 4 subjects, Augustus decided to take the exam in the order he was most proficient in, that is, spells, potions, defense against the dark arts, and finally the least proficient transfiguration. But just after the exam started, Augustus encountered a huge problem, because it was a practical exam for the charms class, and he had to make a pineapple conjure up hands and feet and tap dance across a desk. Originally, this incomplete transformation was very simple, and it fit Professor Flitwick's image as a good man. It seemed that he very much hoped that the students would pass the exam smoothly. But this is a pain for Augustus. After all, For Augustus, the more subtle the deformation, the more difficult it is to do. So Augustus looked at Professor Flitwick quite resentfully and said slowly, "Professor, do you mean that my usual performance makes you dissatisfied? Why are you targeting me like this?" Regarding Augustus's words, Professor Flitwick was stunned for a moment, and then he seemed to think of something and said with some embarrassment, "Oh dear, I really forgot about your situation, but the exam still has to consider the learning situation of most people. For you just need to make these pineapples move, no matter what method you use." Hearing Professor Flitwick's answer, Augustus breathed a sigh of relief. After all, as long as the content is not specified, Augustus has one ways to complete Professor Flitwick's exam. But out of resentment against an irresponsible old bee, Augustus decided to vent his emotions, and Augustus waved his wand lightly. The two pineapples on the table quickly ignited a faint blue flame, and as the flame changed, they quickly turned into two people, a tall old man with a long beard, and a young and handsome young man boy. Then the two villains moved quickly, and saw the little boy pointing his finger at the old man in front of him, muttering something in his mouth. He seemed very excited, although he didn't make a sound. He should say something bad. Then the other party became more and more excited, and saw the little boy rushing in front of the old man, with a set of 10 bursts of bows and slaps, hitting the flaming old man staggeringly, and finally the little boy threw the old man. The opponent's beard was pulled down. At this moment, the magic show ended, the flame disappeared, and 2 roasted pineapples fell from the air, and everyone present swallowed their saliva smelling the aroma of the roasted fruits. But thinking of the brutal magic show just now, everyone couldn't help touching their cheeks, as if those 10 big pusses were drawn on their own faces. Professor Flitwick's eyes were twitching wildly, and he stroked his beard with lingering fear, then quickly announced that Augustus had passed the exam with an excellent grade, and invited him out of his classroom. After leaving the charms exam room, Augustus went around and came to the potions room on the bottom floor of the castle. As soon as he entered the door, he felt an unusually low air pressure. All the candidates in the audience were silently carrying out the examination items. It stands to reason that Professor Snape should be in a good mood recently, and the content of the examination is also very simple, just brewing a forgetting potion. But the atmosphere at the scene was so depressing that Augustus couldn't help but scrutinize the audience, and soon discovered the problem. Just like Harry silently dispensing the potion in the corner, with Stanley standing beside him with a dark face. Professor Snape. Originally, this was very normal, but the crux of the problem was that today's Harry was dressed in men's clothes, and he would forget to wear the women's clothes during such an important exam stage. Looking at the nervous Harry, Augustus could only feel sad for him in his heart. It seemed that a certain savior might be the first student forced to repeat a grade this year, because he failed potions. But when he turned his head and saw Professor Snape walking towards him with a dark face, Augustus couldn't help but thumped in his heart and cursed secretly. It's over. This time the old bat is going to use public power to blackmail himself again. Chapter 87 The Leaving Professor Quirrell. Seeing Professor Snape striding towards him, Augustus was already ready to be blackmailed by him, and the other party probably wanted him to help him brew some difficult potions. His poor life. Dean, what is my exam topic? It shouldn't be like them. Out of respect for Professor Snape, Augustus still pretended to ask politely. Of course, if you are asked to brew those first year potions, wouldn't that be an insult to your talent? In response to Augustus's hypocritical question, Professor Snape replied unceremoniously, "Then what exactly is my exam topic? To be honest, I'm still a little curious about what weird potion formulas you will find for me." Regarding Professor Snape's eccentricity, Augustus expressed that he was in a stable mood, but asked rather jokingly. Professor Snape waved his hand, interrupted this boring speech, then lowered his voice, and said with a heavy face, "Okay, stop having this boring conversation, Mr. Dumbledore. The answer to your question is on the parchment on your left. What I want to tell you now is an absolute secret. You may not know that just yesterday that trash Quirrell offered me his resignation and handed over the questions for this year's exam to Professor McGonagall this morning, and he has already left Hogwarts." Hearing this, Augustus couldn't help feeling a little surprised. It's not that Augustus didn't intend to do something to Professor Quirrell, but the other party was too cautious. In the past 6 months, the other party did not show even a single flaw, and did not even give Augustus an excuse to tease him. But the more the other party was like this, the more Augustus and Professor Snape believed that the other party must be planning a big plan. So during this period of time, Professor Snape was playing the image of a treasure thief in the secret room, while secretly observing Professor Quirrell's situation. But it never occurred to him that the other party would leave Hogwarts at the last moment. This made Augustus a little puzzled, so he continued to ask, "Are you sure he really left? It's not easy for outsiders to enter Hogwarts. Where's the other party's office? Have you checked and found anything unusual?" Regarding Augustus' question, Professor Snape just shook his head indifferently and then continued. "All the places have been checked in detail, and Professor McGonagall assured me that he did take today's exam questions from that trash of Quirrell and saw him leave Hogwarts with his own eyes." Hearing Professor Snape's speech, Augustus couldn't help but fell into contemplation. He still couldn't believe that Voldemort would give up the Sorcerer's Stone and revenge. Seeing Augustus, who was lost in thought, Professor Snape continued. "I once sneaked into Quirrell's useless office and dropped some imperceptible tracking potions on the suitcase he used. Now I can find his location through special magic. After the exam, there will be a week's vacation, and after the final dinner, all the students will go home. So in the last week, I will secretly monitor him. So as the head and acting head of Slytherin, I ask you to ensure the safety of the students during the last week, and of course." Having said that, Professor Snape couldn't help but pause, turned his head to look at Harry Potter, male, in the corner of the classroom, and then continued to speak through gritted teeth. "And Mr. Potter, of course." In fact, Augustus expressed his understanding of Professor Snape's reaction. After all, in this school year, Harry appeared in front of Professor Snape most of the time as a girl. Professor Snape also showed Harry a rare tenderness in his life, but he never expected that at the end of this school year, Harry would have the image of a boy to take the potions exam. This is like a person who has been eating a piece of chocolate cake and feels very delicious and happy, but when he puts the last bite of the cake into his mouth, he realizes that it was actually given by Ali. Such a huge gap would be difficult for anyone to accept. In the face of such a major blow, Professor Snape did not forget to fulfill his promise of interests and asked himself to protect Harry. Augustus couldn't help but secretly sighed in his heart. It's really a hopeless love. But with the sincere eyes of his Professor Snape, Augustus still nodded and then said seriously, "Of course, dear Professor, Harry is also my friend, and I will do my duty as a friend. I believe you know what I have done for them secretly. Not to mention helping you fulfill your promise and resurrecting the person you want to resurrect. This is my reward for your loyalty. As long as you are still loyal to me and willing to join me in that great revolution, my promise remains the same. Efficient." Hearing Augustus's answer, Professor Snape was obviously relieved, but he might feel a little dissatisfied with Augustus's tone of voice. He turned his head arrogantly and then used that iconic cold said loudly, "Okay, let me tell you more. I hope you can fulfill your responsibilities as the head of Slytherin House. There is still not enough time. You still have 2 other subjects to take exams. Now quickly pick up that damn parchment. I hope you can finish it as soon as possible, Mr. Dumbledore." For Professor Snape's behavior, Augustus couldn't help but give a thumbs up in his heart. He is worthy of being a professional spy. The details are grasped. After all, who knows if there are Voldemort's eyes and ears at the exam site. However, when Augustus picked up the parchment, his good impression of Professor Snape disappeared completely, and he saw that it actually read, "Within 1 hour, complete 10 bottles of Dream of Eden in standard capacity." Remarks, "It is the complete version. Don't fool me with the incomplete version that will exhaust all the magic power." For this unreasonable request, Augustus felt very angry. Didn't he just fool you with a potion that was not completely successful in the early stage? As for being so vengeful, 10 standard bottles of Dream of Eden, the donkeys in the production team did not do this. But thinking of Professor Snape's dark circles caused by a lack of sleep all the year round, it completely disappeared on the second day after Augustus gave him the Dream of Eden potion. Now the two over there had an in-depth conversation. It turns out that, since Lily passed away, Professor Snape has been working very late every day. He can only barely fall asleep when he is extremely tired, and he only sleeps for a few hours. After taking the potion, even though the incompleteness of the potion in the early stage would cause him to instantly enter a painful state of exhaustion of magic power, it still allowed him to fall asleep peacefully and meet his most beloved person in his dream. Because this potion may cause serious dependence, Augustus had to limit the supply of one bottle to the other party every week, and reminded him that too much negotiation with the soul may have side effects for future resurrection. However, Professor Snape pulled out his own memory and put it in the pensieve in the principal's room for Augustus to watch. Only then did Augustus realize that Professor Snape was stronger than he imagined. Since meeting Lily's soul in a dream for the first time, Professor Snape has never talked to Lily's soul again. In the past 1 year, Professor Snape has accumulated quite a lot of research on souls. He knew that he couldn't interfere with the dead soul too much, so when he took the potion and fell asleep, it's just that I hide in the distance by myself, silently observing the other party's activities in the world of the undead. No matter how painful I feel, no matter how much I want to confide in the other party, I never take a step closer to the other party's soul. Thinking of these scenes, Augustus sighed and began to use flame magic to brew the potion. Looking at the pink potion in the crucible, he couldn't help sighing in his heart. Always, what a horrible word. Chapter 88 Transfiguration Exam. After a period of simmering, the potion in Augustus' crucible gradually took on a dreamlike feeling. At this time, Augustus took out his gold pocket watch from his pocket, opened it to check the time, and the distance. There are about 5 minutes left in the hour. Can't help but sigh in my heart. Professor Snape is indeed the most outstanding potion master in the magic world today. He can judge the time he needs to brew these potions just by daily observation. Thinking of this, Augustus continued to wave his wand, instructing the flame elves to turn off the fire, start the pot, and fill the bottle, while he was timing the time, while holding a pocket watch. When the last drop of potion was poured into the bottle, the second hand just happened to move towards 12 o'clock. Looking at the pocket watch in his hand, Augustus couldn't help but nodded. You should have finished it. It seems that my calculation did not make any mistakes. As soon as the potion was bottled, Professor Snape came over, looked at the neat potion bottles on the table, and said quite complacently, "You are indeed very good. No wonder whether it is Dumbledore or Voldemort, they regard you as their most powerful assistant." Seeing Professor Snape's complacent expression, Augustus also said seriously, "Okay, don't say this kind of thing anymore. It always feels weird to say such flattering words from your mouth. Remember what you promised me, Mr. Dumbledore." Professor Snape dismissed Augustus' compliments. He waved his sleeves, put the potion bottle on the table into his sleeves, turned and left without looking back, speaking coldly. "Of course, I will fulfill my promise to you. At the same time, please be more careful, Professor. You are also one of my most powerful assistants now. Don't do anything impulsive. After all, the girl in the dream is still waiting for you." Woolen cloth. Regarding Professor Snape's words, Augustus nodded in approval, then took out a ring from his bosom and threw it at him, then said seriously. Sensing something approaching, Professor Snape turned around to catch the flying ring, looked at the ring for a while, then nodded seriously and put the ring on the little finger of his left hand. Seeing Professor Snape accepting the ring, Augustus, who had already completed the exam, didn't stop any longer, turned around and left the potions classroom and walked slowly towards the transfiguration classroom. Because of Professor Quirrell's departure, Professor Snape was supposed to be the professor of the defense against the dark arts exam, but it was collectively opposed by the senior students. This group of people even said that, if Professor Snape invigilated the exam, or formulated the exam questions, they would rather stop the exam collectively, and repeat the grade collectively than take the defense against the dark arts exam. Reluctantly, the invigilation of the defense against the dark arts exam fell to Professor McGonagall, a model worker at Hogwarts. Professor Flitwick was very sympathetic to what happened to Professor McGonagall, and took the initiative to share the invigilation work for the 5th to 7th grades. Therefore, as a first-year student, Augustus will take the last 2 homework exams under the supervision of Professor McGonagall. The Transfiguration classroom is located on the second floor of Hogwarts Castle. Just after leaving Augustus from the basement, it didn't take long to come to the Transfiguration classroom. Looking around, the students in the entire Transfiguration classroom were divided into two large groups of 8 teams. The first and second grade teams in the middle were personally managed by Professor McGonagall, and the third and fourth grade teams next to them were assisted by the prefects of 4 colleges of. What caught Augustus' attention in particular was a prefect who was administering the Transfiguration exam for the 4th graders. His fiery red hair was so eye-catching. Touching his chin, Augustus tried to remember the name of the other party, but before he could remember, he heard Professor McGonagall shout to himself. "Come in quickly, Mr. Dumbledore, don't keep standing at the door to block other people's access, and you go to Percy to take the exam. The content of the 4th grade exam is to turn a book into a mobile armor. I believe this, it shouldn't be a problem for you." Hearing Professor McGonagall's shout, Augustus quickly recovered from his thoughts, bowed slightly to apologize to everyone present, and then walked towards the red-haired male prefect. "Mr. Augustus Dumbledore, nice to meet you. I have always wanted to join the organization you founded, but you said that the official evaluation of the organization's personnel will only be held in the next school year. So I have been busy with exams, and I haven't had time to attend the various rallies you hosted. I'm very sorry for this, and I would like to express my sincere apologies to you." Seeing Augustus approaching, the senior student named Percy seemed very excited and offered to shake his hand with Augustus and said sincerely. Looking at the tall and thin boy in front of him, Augustus finally recalled the memory of his previous life. The man in front of him was a strange boy in the Weasley family, a rather ambitious boy. "No need to apologize, Mr. Weasley. Your grades can be said to be among the best in the entire Hogwarts. Talents like you are of course very welcome in my organization. You don't need to go through any evaluations. After the next school year starts, I will hold the first comprehensive meeting organized by me. An outstanding talent like you will definitely be invited at that time. Please be sure to honor and participate." For this kind of ambitious and capable person, Augustus will of course extend an olive branch. After all, the Saints will not even have a Gryffindor sign up. If the Gryffindor prefects can play a role, it's a good lead, so it's still necessary to win over. So Augustus also pretended to be very sincere and said slowly to the boy in front of him in a very respectful tone. After some pleasantries, Augustus left him an address and told him that if he had any difficulties or if he needed help with any plans for his future career, he could write to this address and he was willing to help him, offer genuine help. After all the polite words were finished, Augustus officially started his Transfiguration exam. The content of the exam was to turn a book into a moving armor, which was too ordinary for Augustus. He waved the Elder Wand in his hand, and the 2 books quickly flew from the bookshelf into the mid-air of the open space, and then quickly turned into 2 medieval knights in gorgeous armor, and holding long swords. The 2 knights quickly contributed to a wonderful duel of swordsmanship in the classroom. Their swordsmanship was superb, and their swords were deadly. When the long swords collided with each other, sparks flew all over the place. After more than 10 minutes of duel, the knight on the left seized a gap, sideways avoided the opponent's heavy slash, and then made a simple straight thrust, piercing his long sword through the opponent's throat. Of course, for the physical and mental health of the students present, no red liquid was splashed out. After the defeated knight turned into a ball of light, a book that was pierced through the middle fell to the ground. The victorious knight raised his sword and cheered for a while, then knelt down on one knee in front of Augustus, performed a standard knight salute, and then turned into a ball of light and turned back into a book again. The 2 books had just landed, and the audience burst into applause. They were all amazed at the wonderful magic show. Only Professor McGonagall shook his head, then picked up the report card and wrote an E, good, and a note at the back. This student is extremely talented, but his personality is too flamboyant, and the magic he uses does not meet the norms, so this evaluation is made. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89 Final exam ends. When Professor McGonagall just started to write, Augustus came to Professor McGonagall, wanting to see how his grades were. Originally, Augustus didn't care much about his grades. After all, he came here not so much to study, but to develop his own power. After all, children's worldview has not yet been fully formed, so it is easier to influence. So Augustus didn't care about the grades, but the day before the exam, Professor Snape deliberately found himself and asked him to get 7 O's, excellent, in this exam. To ensure that all the grade 1s come from Slytherin house, so as to win the grade 1 7 consecutive championships, and clearly state that this is one of the responsibilities of being the grade chief, which must be completed, otherwise the next grade chief will take the position. It may no longer belong to me. For this kind of threat that might shake his position, Augustus had to pay attention to his own results. So when he saw Professor McGonagall hit an E for himself, Augustus immediately asked, "Didn't I complete the exam goals you set? I think everyone present will think that my magic is perfect." Regarding Augustus' question, Professor McGonagall seemed very calm. She said slowly, "Of course, in terms of the splendor of magic and spellcasting skills, it is indeed impeccable, but you obviously have an easier choice, Mr. Dumbledore. Don't forget that this is just an exam, not your personal magic show. You should abide by the rules, and don't waste everyone's time by being so ostentatious." Regarding Professor McGonagall's explanation, Augustus said that he didn't believe a word, because all the transformation techniques present would not be simple transformations, and would definitely add a series of actions to show their results. After carefully observing Professor McGonagall's facial expressions, Augustus became more certain of his conjecture, because Augustus saw a hint of feline cunning on her face. Combined with the report card that Professor McGonagall put on the top, it was Hermione's report card, which recorded the test scores of defense against the dark arts and transfiguration, all of which were excellent without exception. It seems that Professor McGonagall is very dissatisfied with Slytherin house's dominance of the first place in the grade, so he had to look for breakthrough opportunities in the items he invigilated. And one of my carelessness made me the first prey of Professor McGonagall. Augustus also said that there was nothing he could do about it. After all, Professor McGonagall was the invigilator of the exam. Rushing against the professor might be counterproductive, so he could only look for some opportunities later. So Augustus said, "Although I don't agree with what you said just now, after all, now is the exam process. For the sake of everyone, and your precious time, we will debate after the exam. Now please let me take the defense against the dark arts exam. By the way, Professor, what is the topic of this year's defense against the dark arts exam?" To be honest, I still have a little expectation. Hearing Augustus's decent words, Professor McGonagall nodded in satisfaction, but when he heard Augustus ask himself what the test topic of this year's defense against the dark arts class was, Professor McGonagall showed a look of disgust. With an embarrassing expression, he could only speak with difficulty in the end. "There is no need for you to take the defense against the dark arts exam. Your magic defense ability is estimated to be comparable to few people in the entire British magic world. Such an exam is meaningless to you. You will directly get excellent. As for your doubts about the transfiguration exam results, after the exam is over, you can come to my office and we will talk about it in detail." Seeing Professor McGonagall's embarrassing expression and that rare flustered language, Augustus felt that there must be something profound in it, and maybe his grades could be changed without waiting for the exam. Thinking of this, Augustus immediately said forcefully, "As a student, how can I take the final exam? If I can get an excellent test result without taking the exam, it's not fair to other students. I believe that as the vice principal of Hogwarts, you are also the most impartial and strict professor in the whole school. You should not allow this kind of thing to happen, so I ask that I must take the exam." Hearing Augustus's high-sounding words, Professor McGonagall couldn't help but twitched his eyes. It was the first time he saw a student who asked for an exam after so many years of practice, and he was speechless for a while. Augustus seized this opportunity, took advantage of the moment when Professor McGonagall was in a daze, and got a roll of parchment marked as an exam question from the podium, and then quickly unfolded it and read it seriously. For the content of this final exam, Professor Quirrell played his usual trash style, just asking all the students to be able to release the spell they are best at. And according to the division of grades, according to the content of the book, detailed notes are made at the back, explaining the spells that can be used for exams in each grade, and students only need to choose one of them that they are best at. I don't know if Professor Quirrell has forgotten, or if he has run out of ink here. He didn't stipulate the spells for the first year exam. That is to say, first year students only need to cast a spell that they are best at to pass the exam. Looking up from the parchment, Augustus saw Professor McGonagall's nervous expression. It seemed that the other party was really afraid that he would cast another powerful spell and cause unnecessary trouble. But for such a God-given opportunity, Augustus certainly did not let it go. He pointed to the signature of Professor McGonagall on the parchment and said seriously, "Your signature is on it. You can't go back on your word." Hearing Augustus's words, Professor McGonagall regretted it to death. That day, Professor Quirrell took over the exam questions for this year because there were too many things to do, so he just glanced at them and signed himself. The name is recognized. It wasn't until the exam officially started today that Professor McGonagall found out how big a hole Professor Quirrell had dug for himself. If this little villain in front of him was unhappy and had a powerful spell, he didn't know how much trouble he would cause. Then what exactly do you want to ensure that you don't destroy anything? Facing the threat of Augustus, Professor McGonagall had no choice but to compromise. "I didn't threaten your professor. I just want to get the grades I should get. That's all. I believe that you, who are fair, will definitely recognize a little flaw in your work," Augustus said seriously. Things have developed to this point. In order to successfully complete everyone's exams and not waste everyone's time, Professor McGonagall silently nodded in agreement. Augustus, who got Professor McGonagall's consent, simply cast a flame spell, and after Professor McGonagall changed his grades, he left the exam site and completed all the exams for that school year. Augustus, who left the exam site, did not go to play with his friends like other students who had completed the exam, or go to the auditorium to order a large amount of food to comfort his tortured soul. Instead, he went directly to the Slytherin common room, and taking advantage of the time when everyone was reveling in the end of the exam, Augustus entered his secret suitcase again. "I still have a lot of things to do. The first is to improve my firepower." Augustus believes that he will soon have a head-on confrontation with Voldemort, and I want to give the opponent a big surprise in that battle. Chapter 90 Holiday Time. With the end of the final exam, the 1-week holiday came as scheduled. This was the most relaxing time in Hogwarts. Students didn't have any homework and didn't need to preview any courses. All excessive entertainment and consumption can use. I just went through the torture of the final exam. Can't I have fun and relax? As an excuse to achieve self-deceiving self-comfort. Of course, for most ordinary students, the holiday after the exam is nothing more than a meal before the execution scene, where the grades are handed out. The students who have completely let go of themselves began to try various activities that they would not dare to try at ordinary times, such as finding a place where no one was around to release their youthful passion on a dark and stormy night. As for the behavior of the students, as long as it is not the kind that will kill people, most of the professors turned a blind eye to it, and only some young students who went astray may gain unprecedented growth after watching it. However, for Augustus, this period of time is extremely difficult, even if he is ready to face all threats. But the peaceful passing of the days still made Augustus feel more and more anxious. Apart from being in his secret base these days, he was preparing to surprise Voldemort. It is to come to the Owl Tower on time every night, waiting for an owl with a dark body and particularly greasy feathers, to send Professor Snape's daily surveillance report to Professor Quirrell. According to Professor Snape's report, Professor Quirrell stayed in a hotel in Diagon Alley and appeared in the Leaky Cauldron on time every day to drink. His behavior was extremely regular and his expression was very relaxed. But such a normal behavior seemed very abnormal. As two of the three people who knew the truth in Hogwarts, Augustus and Professor Snape, both believed that Voldemort must be planning some major plan. The time of the holidays passed quickly, and the day when the grades were released suddenly came. When almost all the students were watching the grades in the corridor, Augustus came to the Owl Tower ahead of time. Tomorrow is the end of term dinner, and it is also the time when Augustus deduces that Voldemort is most likely to attack, but the investigation before the war must be rigorous. After all, the opponent's performance now has completely exceeded previous expectations. The current Voldemort seems to have opened up the two veins of Renandu. The previous image of lack of IQ is gone forever, and now he is more like a Dark Lord who secretly plans everything. Augustus was both nervous and excited about all this. The nervousness was that his appearance really broke the original laws of the world. The excitement lies in the fact that the opponent I need to face finally has a little sense of hierarchy rather than a simple cerebral palsy. Coo, coo, coo. A series of hoots came from the owl, which was the owl named Lily by Professor Snape, and it was flying rapidly from the sky. In fact, this is a rather strong owl, with jet black feathers like a ghost in the night. Very handsome, but for some reason, Professor Snape gave it a very feminine name, Lily. And the image of this owl has to make Augustus complain. It is simply a replica of Professor Snape in the owl. The whole body is also pitch black, and the specially treated feathers may look very greasy, and a pair of piercing eyes always reveals sarcasm. The most similar is the feathers on the owl's head. They are much longer than the feathers on the head of ordinary owls, so that they will hang to the sides, just like this owl has a shawl. Seeing the owl flying over, Augustus quickly took out the high-quality owl snacks from his arms. You must know that this owl is extremely arrogant, and it is impossible to get letters from it without any benefit. Hanging the prepared snacks around the owl's neck and touching its greasy feathers with disgust, Augustus took the letter from its claws, unfolded the small note, and just write a simple word, normal. After burning the note in his hand, Augustus left the Owl Tower. It is now basically certain that Voldemort definitely intends to start his own plan tomorrow, and it is already certain that he himself will not appear on the scene immediately. You must know that Hogwarts itself is a war fortress, and you have to pay a very huge price if you want to come in directly. It seems that the other party already has a detailed plan, and has definitely found helpers and cannon fodder. Now I should also arrange some escape routes for those innocent students who may be injured. In fact, during this period of time, Augustus wrote to Dumbledore many times, asking the other party to return to school in time, so that Voldemort could deal with it alone. But the safety of the teachers and students of the school still needs the protection of the headmaster. After all, apart from Voldemort, the dark wizard I met in the depths of the Forbidden Forest last time is not an ordinary person. If the two sides reach a cooperation and come to an internal and external cooperation, then Hogwarts will be really dangerous, and Augustus has a strong premonition. It was the two German wizards who seemed to come here for Dumbledore, the old bee, and Dumbledore's reply further confirmed his thoughts. In his letter, he made it clear that the two German wizards would not pose any threat to Hogwarts, and he could make an absolute guarantee. As for going back to school to protect the safety of his classmates, Dumbledore said that he could do nothing. After all, he had very important work to do, and he really couldn't get away. And he also said in the letter that he had told Professor McGonagall the truth, and said that if Hogwarts was really threatened, the auras of the British Ministry of Magic would rush to the scene quickly. At the end of the letter, Dumbledore also complained rarely, saying that he has been bearing a heavy burden, but he has only been away for half a year. It is very disappointing that Augustus actually wrote a letter to express his difficulties. If the other party cannot bear the responsibility of fate, then Augustus must promise himself that he will never transfer to the Durmstrang School of Magic. Then I can reluctantly go back to school to help. Facing the ridicule of his useless father, Augustus directly burned the letter with magic, and then did not write a letter to the other party. He directly put the ashes in the original envelope, and asked the other party's owl to send it back. Now the opponent's target has been basically determined, and the attack time has also been basically determined. The only thing that needs to be paid attention to now is how to avoid casualties if the opponent really attacks Hogwarts madly. For this reason, Augustus, who returned to the Slytherin common room, summoned the prefects of the major colleges who were basically confirmed to be members of the Saints, and announced the plan to them in the common room. Now I have received clear news that after tomorrow's dinner, Hogwarts may be attacked by criminals. So in order to avoid unnecessary casualties, I have asked Mr. Malfoy to transform the fireplaces of the various colleges. You can use the special flu powder to use the fireplaces to leave the school. Of course, in order to avoid lurking hostile element in the school, these special flu powder will be managed and kept by all your prefects, and they will be used only when necessary. When the chaos really occurs, we must evacuate in an organized manner, and if necessary, we can use strong measures. This will be the first collective action of our saints. I wish you success, and for the greater good. Facing the seniors in the custom uniforms of the Saints Association, Augustus scanned the crowd seriously, and then said solemnly in an unquestionable tone, "For the greater good." Hearing Augustus' serious tone, everyone dared not neglect, took the flu powder they received from Malfoy, and responded solemnly. Chapter 91 belonging to the Academy Cup. The time came for the final dinner, which was the last banquet for all the students at Hogwarts. After the banquet was over, most of the students would return to their homes. And what's different from the previous situation is that before the dinner, Professor McGonagall has issued an announcement asking all students to go home quickly after the dinner. It is not allowed to stay in the school. Even the students who have applied to stay in the school need to return to the school after a week. Within a week after the dinner, no students are allowed in the school. Many students expressed their incomprehension to this strange request, but just asking the other party to leave the school for a week still made everyone generally accept the announcement. Before the dinner began, the entire Hogwarts auditorium was brightly lit. The students of the whole school sat down at 4 long tables as they did during the school division period, and the professor sat at the top of the auditorium. It's just that careful students may notice that Snape, Professor Pooh and Headmaster Dumbledore did not attend the banquet. The decoration of the entire auditorium today is dominated by the colors of Slytherin College. Green flags are hung all over the auditorium, and silver ribbons are embellished. This is the glory of being the winner of this year's Academy Cup. Ding, ding, ding. Professor McGonagall, who is today's host, is sitting in the principal's seat today. She hit the gold cup in front of her with the silver spoon. The crisp sound echoed in the auditorium, and the noisy auditorium returned to silence. Before we start the dinner, we need to confirm the ownership of the annual House Cup. According to the current ranking, Slytherin House will undoubtedly win this year's House Cup. But Principal Dumbledore sent me an envelope yesterday, saying that there are still some final decisions regarding this year's scores. After seeing the silence of the audience, Professor McGonagall spoke slowly and took out a beautiful envelope from his arms. Professor McGonagall's words once again caused some noisy discussions in the auditorium, especially the Gryffindor students, who ranked second. Their eyes were full of hope at this time. You must know that Professor Snape's traditional skills have failed this year because of Harry's female attire. Although Professor Snape is still strict with Gryffindor students, the phenomenon of randomly deducting points has gradually disappeared. So much so that the house points of Gryffindor House and Slytherin House this year are not too huge, only 100 points behind. Of course, this is also due to the unyielding Miss Beaver. Hermione's active learning and hard work in answering questions earned Gryffindor most of the points. Professor McGonagall, who opened the envelope and took a closer look, saw a significant change in the expression on his face. At first, there was abnormal joy, but then extreme disappointment. But Professor McGonagall quickly adjusted her emotions, and she said seriously, according to the letter from Principal Dumbledore, the following students will be rewarded with extra points, and an explanation of the reasons for the extra points will be attached. Mr. Ennui, with his extraordinary willpower and hard-working spirit, achieved a major breakthrough in his potions achievement, for which he will be rewarded with 20 points. Mr. Harry Potter, because of his unique macup, the students of the same college have won a better learning environment, and he has stood up for his friends many times. For her bravery and persistence, 40 points are awarded for this. Miss Hermione Granger has become the youngest recipient of the Order of Merlin in the history of Hogwarts with her outstanding talent and hard work. For her wisdom and excellence, she is awarded 100 points. As soon as Professor McGonagall's words fell, the entire Gryffindor students were boiling. They never expected that their house would become the final victor to end the 6 consecutive championships of Slytherin House. All the students hugged and kissed each other frantically, and the 3 Gryffindor warriors also received warm cheers. Compared to the madness of Gryffindor College, Slytherin College was deathly silent, and everyone's eyes were full of anger. They never expected that Dumbledore, an old bee, would be so shameless. You must know that almost all of the 3 things mentioned in his letter were related to Slytherin House, and the first 2 were all caused by Professor Snape's behavior. The last item is even more outrageous. After all, everyone knows that Hermione's third-class mail-in medal can be said to have been honored by Augustus, and she herself does not have that qualification. Draco brought the prefects of Slytherin House to Augustus's side and said indignantly, "I don't mean to disrespect your grandfather, but Principal Dumbledore's behavior this time is too much. We want to protest. This is the glory of our Slytherin House." Seeing the little dragon that was about to breathe fire, Augustus waved his hand, pointed to Professor McGonagall on the podium, and said slowly with a calm expression, "Don't worry, this is the House Cup, and it must belong to our Slytherin House." Look at Professor McGonagall's expression. "Dear students, please don't forget that I'm the one who has achieved the greatest achievement at Hogwarts this year. Your chief, Augustus Dumbledore." Hearing Augustus's words, Draco and the others felt a sense of enlightenment and hurriedly bowed to apologize to Augustus and then returned to their seats one after another, looking at the opposite with a teasing look. Gryffindors. Facing Gryffindor College, which had already begun to celebrate, Professor McGonagall seemed very embarrassed. She already regretted opening this letter, but she was always ready to read it evenly. I saw Professor McGonagall tap the gold cup in front of him with a spoon again, signaling for everyone to be quiet. After everyone was quiet, Professor McGonagall continued to read. "For this reason, I offer my most heartfelt blessings to Gryffindor, and may the courage of Gryffindor be with you forever." Just after reading this sentence, the eyes of the Gryffindor students are even more golden. In their view, this is basically Principal Dumbledore's blessing to his house for winning the House Cup. The following sentence should be the final announcement was made, but the following sentence caused the Gryffindor students to fall into hell immediately after going to heaven. Professor McGonagall reads slowly, "But we can't forget that there is a student who is really talented. In this short year, he has achieved outstanding results in 3 areas, including spells, potions, and transfiguration, and became the youngest recipient of the Order of Merlin, 2nd class, in the entire wizarding world. Mr. Augustus Dumbledore. For his unparalleled genius, I will add 200 points to Slytherin House. May the glory of Slytherin be with you forever." After reading the letter, Professor McGonagall didn't want to waste any more time, so he waved his wand directly, and a giant Slytherin College banner fell behind the professor's chair. This also officially marks the House Cup, which symbolizes the glory of the 4 houses, and this year will be won by Slytherin House. When the flag just fell, the students of Slytherin House and the other 2 houses began to applaud enthusiastically. Only the students of Gryffindor College kept their heads down and remained silent. After all, the roller coaster-like emotional experience just now was really unacceptable for a while. With the official confirmation of the ownership of the Academy Cup, the dinner officially began, but when the first course was just served on the dining table, a loud noise was heard outside the door. Hagrid hurried in with a bloody man in his arms. The man seemed to have been seriously injured, and judging from the wound, he must have been attacked by some dangerous magical animal. Hagrid slowly put him on the ground. As soon as the other party landed, he hurriedly looked towards the rostrum and shouted loudly, "Where is Headmaster Dumbledore? Hurry up and inform him that a dark wizard is attacking the British Ministry of Magic with violent magical animals. We urgently need reinforcement. The situation is extremely critical." After finishing speaking, probably due to excessive blood loss, the other party fell to the ground. Chapter 92 International Aid. Give them arms. What? After the member of the Ministry of Magic fell to the ground, riots quickly broke out in the Hogwarts Great Hall, especially the senior girls near the entrance of the auditorium. Seeing the other party's miserable appearance, they immediately screamed. Fear quickly spread in the auditorium, and various levels of riots broke out in various colleges. Only the students of Slytherin College turned their attention to Augustus, who was the head of the long table. Boom, boom. Seeing that the situation was getting out of control, Professor McGonagall had no choice but to release 2 magic fireworks in the auditorium. The huge explosion quickly brought the auditorium back to a stable state. Seeing that the auditorium gradually calmed down, Professor McGonagall took Professor Flitwick and Mrs. Pangley and quickly came to the man from the professor's seat. Mrs. Pangley briefly checked the other party's injuries, took out some medicine powder and sprinkled it on the other party's wounds, then took out a bandage and began to bandage the other party. Finally, he took out a bottle of crimson potion from his bosom, which was left by Professor Snape before he left, and it was a powerful recovery potion specially brewed by him. With Hagrid's help, the bottle of potion was barely swallowed from the other party's mouth. Looking at the painful expression on the other party's face, one could imagine that the potion taste was not very delicious. The effect of Professor Snape's potion was really remarkable, and less than a minute later, the Ministry of Magic official regained consciousness. "John, are you okay? Why did you suffer such a serious injury, and those terrible scars on your body? Tell me what's going on." Seeing that the other party finally regained consciousness, Professor McGonagall could no longer hold back the anxiety in his heart, and asked quickly, "Dean, oh no, Professor McGonagall, the Ministry of Magic has been attacked by a dark wizard and a berserk magical animal. The opponent is very powerful, and seems to have special magic props. The auras of the Ministry of Magic seem to have been given some kind of powerful potion by them, and many of them have lost their ability to fight. Now everyone can barely defend with the help of the magic circle in the aura office. Moreover, the berserk magical animals don't have any sense at all. Many officials of the Ministry of Magic who didn't want to harm them have been severely injured by dark wizards and magical animals. We urgently need reinforcement, and there may already be casualties." The Ministry of Magic official named John, after hearing Professor McGonagall's question, quickly replied excitedly. He was so emotional that he didn't even feel any bleeding from the wound. The official's words made the audience fall into a deathly silence. Since the Dark Lord failed 11 years ago, there has never been such a bad event in the entire British wizarding world. From the explanation of the other party, anyone with a little brain can analyze that this is an organized and premeditated invasion. At this time, Professor McGonagall seemed very embarrassed. As one of the people who had learned the truth, Professor McGonagall was also very sure that Voldemort's ultimate goal must be Hogwarts. But judging from the official's injuries, the situation of the Ministry of Magic has reached a very critical moment. If there is no one to support it, it is likely to cause a large number of casualties. Okay, Professor, you should go to support the Ministry of Magic first. I assure you, I will guarantee the safety of all the teachers and students of Hogwarts. Augustus, who sat at the head of the long table in Slytherin College, shook the goblet in his hand and poured the bright red blood-like liquid into his mouth. After drinking the last drop of red wine, Augustus stood up slowly, walked towards Professor McGonagall, and said slowly, "But," seeing Augustus who had already walked to his side, Professor McGonagall said in a difficult way. However, before he started speaking, Augustus interrupted him with a wave of his hand, and he spoke slowly. "Okay, Professor, the other party actually made such a decision because they are sure that we will support the Ministry of Magic. That noseless guy, who didn't know what he ate, has such a remarkable improvement in IQ, but he is still like a mouse in the dark. If the cat doesn't leave, he won't dare to come to the house to steal this piece of cheese. And if we Hogwarts don't go to support the Ministry of Magic, wait until after the incident is over, in case this stinky gutter rat doesn't come to attack our Hogwarts. Then it may be a fatal blow to the glory of Hogwarts." After finishing speaking, Augustus looked at the Ministry of Magic official again, and asked calmly, "How many people are there on the other side? How many magical animals are there? And what is the main threat to the Ministry of Magic now? Please explain everything in detail." The other party obviously didn't expect Augustus's question. He was stunned for a while, and then said hastily, "There are about 4 to 5 black wizards on the other side. The magical animals are mainly cats such as poison sac leopards, and some mountain monsters with rough skin and thick flesh. The total number should have exceeded 50 or more." Hearing this news, Professor McGonagall couldn't help but take a deep breath. You must know that the number of auras who are truly capable of combat in the entire British magic world will not exceed 40. Hearing the other party's answer, Augustus reluctantly nodded, thinking that the other party was a real waste. 50 animals plus 4 or 5 people could put the British Ministry of Magic in such a dangerous situation. But after thinking about it, the more rubbish the other party is, the easier it is for him to use him. At least at the current stage, the Ministry of Magic is still very useful, so he said seriously. According to what you just said, the auras of the Ministry of Magic have basically lost their combat capabilities. Even if I write to my grandfather now, it may be too late. After all, no matter how powerful Professor McGonagall and others are, together with Professor Flitwick and others, they are just delivering food. What you have to do is to turn those who cannot participate in the battle into those who can fight, otherwise you will have no chance of winning. After finishing speaking, Augustus ignored the other party's bitter face, waved his hand, and took out Soviet infantry equipment that could arm a company from the system space. Looking at the shiny AK-47 rifle, which was still painted with butter, and the RPG-7 rocket launcher like a javelin, the corners of Professor McGonagall's eyes couldn't help but twitch. I can temporarily donate these weapons to the British Ministry of Magic. Don't look down on them. Equipped with these weapons, the horseman can hunt 8-eyed spiders wantonly. You can use it to beat those little cats. I think it should be enough. Don't worry, the operation is very simple. The operation instructions of the 2 weapons don't even have half a piece of parchment. After finishing speaking, Augustus looked at Professor McGonagall again, and said jokingly, Professor, sometimes you have to admit that muggles are indeed more talented in killing than wizards, and this is also to resolve this crisis as soon as possible. I have just used magic to notify Professor Snape to meet you, and I have told Draco to go to the Owl Tower to send the letter to my lazy grandfather, so you can go with peace of mind. As for the safety and retreat of other students, don't worry, I already have a detailed plan. After listening to what Augustus said, although Professor McGonagall seemed extremely reluctant, he still greeted Professor Flitwick, put the weapons away, and brought Hagrid and the Ministry of Magic official to Hogwarts. Hereby go outside. Hagrid had already held that individual burst cannon converted from a Boffer's 20 anti-aircraft gun, and couldn't put it down, and kept stroking the shiny barrel. Hearing Professor McGonagall's order, Hagrid put the long ammunition chain on his back, and then carried 2 large boxes of ammunition in one hand like a shopping bag. Holding the injured official as gently as possible with the other hand, he followed Professor McGonagall's footsteps to the outside of Hogwarts Castle. After the professor left, Augustus immediately came to the principal's seat, stroked the gold cup that symbolized the principal's identity, and said extremely excitedly, Gentlemen and ladies, follow my instructions, and start planning A. Chapter 93 The crisis is coming. As Augustus's voice fell, all the prefects of the various colleges wearing the uniform of the saints immediately began to organize the students, and walk to the common room of their colleges. Finally, through the fireplace in the common room, the evacuation task was completed. Of course, this organizational task could not be completed so easily. Hawthorne jumped out at the beginning of the evacuation. Why should we listen to you? You are not a professor, not to mention that Hogwarts is the safest place in the entire British wizarding world. It is the safest place for us to stay here. Augustus looked towards the source of the sound. A senior Gryffindor student shouted loudly as he pushed and shoved the members of the study group who asked him to evacuate. Behind him was a well-built Gryffindor senior girl, pulling his clothes behind her, as if trying to stop him from doing such an irrational thing. Looking at the girl behind him, and the obvious jealousy that she looked at him, Augustus couldn't help sighing in his heart. My own damn charm. After thinking about it, Augustus was not used to the other party, and directly took out his Elder Wand, pointed at the other party and read. Stupefy passed out. A silver-white light beam shot towards the opposite side, and the other side fell into a coma immediately after hitting it. Seeing the fallen student, Augustus put his wand against his neck, and then said loudly, according to Snape's acting headmaster's instructions, after all the professors leave, I will automatically act as the headmaster of Hogwarts, and now I ask you all, follow your prefects and return to the common rooms of your respective colleges immediately, and then all evacuate Hogwarts in an orderly manner. If anyone talks too much, or stirs up trouble, you should know what the consequences will be. After finishing speaking, Augustus turned his head to look at Draco, who had already returned, and gave him a look, and Draco quickly waved his hand. The members of the student union who received the signal immediately returned to work. 4 tall boys from Slytherin immediately walked to the unconscious Gryffindor student and carried him by the limbs to lead him away from the auditorium. Seeing the scene of the auditorium, where order had been restored, Augustus nodded and continued to caress the golden cup that represented the identity of the principal. Draco, who was next to him, saw Augustus's movements and immediately went to the seat where Augustus had just been sitting and picked up the unfinished bottle of French Bordeaux red wine. When he came to Augustus, he quickly poured it on the other side and said respectfully, "Chief, oh no, I'm sorry, it should be the principal. The evacuation organized by our study meeting and the Saints Association this time may be the most successful collective event in the history of Hogwarts. After school starts next year, our organization will actually replace that useless student union and become Hogwarts' #1 student organization." Hearing Dracula's flattering words, Augustus felt physically and mentally happy, otherwise the Malfoy family would have survived. This ability to see through the stitches and flatter the horse is indeed not low. It can be said that the family is rich in education, Augustus said slowly, after taking a sip of the red wine in the glass. Of course, any organization that needs to demonstrate its capabilities cannot rely solely on strong financial resources and the charisma of individual leaders. It must demonstrate integrity and obedience so that others understand that it is a whole and an organization. The successful completion of this evacuation mission will demonstrate the ability of an organization in the hearts of students and facilitate our future development. Of course, I will not forget the important role you played in it. You are all an important part of the successful completion of this mission. After finishing speaking, Augusto also picked up the bottle of red wine, reached out to fetch a goblet from the dining table, poured a little red wine, and handed it to Draco. After the other party caught it, he picked up the principal's gold cup and the other party clinked the glass lightly. The sound of clinking glasses echoed in the sparsely populated auditorium. Looking at Draco, Augustus said seriously, "Thank you for your efforts, witnessing the great revolution starting now, for the greater good." After speaking, he drank the red liquid in the golden cup, then put the golden cup back to its original place, finally closed his eyes, and waited for the result of this evacuation on the principal's seat. Draco, who had just clinked glasses with Augustus, was still a little dazed, but quickly came back to his senses, and drank the red liquid in the goblet in one gulp. With cheeks flushed from the stimulation of alcohol, holding his own dedicated notebook, he walked towards the common room of the 4 colleges. After all, as the actual person in charge of this operation, I have to sort out all the results of this evacuation operation to prevent any mistakes in the chaotic situation. With the departure of the last members of the study session led by Draco, only Augustus was left in the auditorium, half lying on the Hogwarts headmaster's seat with his eyes closed. Augustus has been thinking about the situation in the past few days in his mind, and even he has to admire Voldemort's powerful planning ability and his suddenly raised IQ. It seems that the other party has already started planning a long time ago, with sufficient preparations and detailed plans, even though he already knew that Dumbledore had left Hogwarts. But just to be on the safe side, the other party still sent a large number of forces to attack the British Ministry of Magic. Because Voldemort knew that Dumbledore would not let the British Ministry of Magic suffer heavy losses, whether it was out of maintaining the honor of Hogwarts or out of his own sense of responsibility. As long as the other party leaves Hogwarts and is delayed because of these trivial matters, he has the opportunity to sneak into Hogwarts again, steal the Philosopher's Stone, and carry out his own tricks on Augustus and Harry Potter avenge. In fact, according to the agreement between Augustus and Professor McGonagall, when the professors left, Augustus should use the defensive magic of Hogwarts, which is why he was appointed as the principal, in order to prevent someone from sneaking into Hogwarts again, and mainly in a defensive posture, waiting for the professors to return. But Augustus did not do this at all, because he knew very well that the other party's targets would only be himself and Harry Potter, and Voldemort's perverted paranoid personality would definitely only target himself. After all, how could the proud Dark Lord be interested in attacking a middle school? And I have given Harry their powerful alchemy defense magic props. As long as someone attacks them, not only will they not suffer any damage, but the position of the other party will be exposed immediately, and Augustus can go to support them, thus achieving a one-on-one battle with Voldemort. After all, if he can't defeat this so-called second generation Dark Lord head-on, it will be difficult to implement his next plan. Just when Augustus was still imagining the scene of fighting Voldemort in his mind, how would he release the water? And he had to prepare multi-angle photo stones for shooting. In order to ensure that the duel looks evenly matched, it will not be crushed one-sidedly, thus destroying the overall enjoyment. Before finishing thinking, Draco's anxious voice came from his ear. Chief, oh no, the principal, Harry, Ron, and Hermione, the three of them did not appear in the Gryffindor common room. I have already sent someone to look for them, but they have not been found yet. Hearing Draco's voice, Augustus came back from the state of closing his eyes and resting his mind, touched his chin, and then searched for the other party's location with scrying magic. They quickly found each other in the secret room on the 4th floor. It seemed that they were still playing the boring game of the brave, but soon Augustus discovered the problem. 3 people. Why did the information brought by the detection magic only come from 2 sources of magic? That is to say, some of them did not wear their own alchemy props. Thinking of this, Augustus quickly got down from his seat. It seems that in this chess game, there is a person who is not willing to play the role of a pawn. Chapter 94. The fish bit the hook. Augustus, who was standing in the center of the Hogwarts Great Hall, felt his mind buzzing at this moment, and he never expected it to be in his plan. The problem was not the 2 players playing chess, but a chess piece that stayed on the chessboard, suddenly had its own thoughts, and wanted to jump off the chessboard, from a chess piece to a chess player. Looking at Augustus, who was standing motionless with a gloomy face, Draco already realized that something was wrong, so he said nervously, "Principal, do you want to send a few senior students to find them back? After all, things haven't happened yet, and there is still room for relaxation." Hearing Draco's words, Augustus couldn't help but ponder, thought for a while, and then said slowly, "No, the other party has been planning for several months, and our response strategy this time also consumed a lot of manpower and material resources. If the other party sees a clue, it is likely that all previous efforts will be wasted. Once the other party lurks in the dark again, this matter will be even more difficult. And this is the first operation of our organization. Only success is not allowed, and if anyone is willing to pay the price for his ridiculous self-esteem, so be it. This is his personal free choice. I respect his choice. Even if his choice will bring him death, it is his own choice." Having said that, Augustus paused for a moment, turned his head to face Draco directly, and said seriously, "Mr. Malfoy, after everyone retreats, you are here to respond. If anything else happens, you immediately take Harry and the others who fled to the auditorium, and use the ring on your hand to find Professor Snape. This task has certain risks, and may even be life-threatening. Are you willing to accept it?" Facing Augustus' serious words, Draco nodded his head heavily without hesitation for a moment, and then said seriously, "My eternal loyalty to you, sir. No matter what your order is, I will resolutely carry it out, for the greater good." Facing Draco's loyal words, Augustus didn't say much, just nodded slightly, and led Draco towards the rostrum again. The 2 sat in the positions of the principal and the vice principal respectively. Augustus took out his treasured Romanican tea from the system space, and poured a full glass for himself and Draco. Picking up the principal's gold cup, Augustus and Draco clinked glasses again. Augustus said sincerely, "For your loyalty, Mr. Malfoy, for the greater good. After the mouse in the gutter bites its hook, you sit in the headmaster's seat and continue to wait in order to complete your task. If you are nervous, you can finish the remaining bottle of red wine. Don't worry, I won't tell Mr. Lucius that you drank secretly tonight. After all, according to the procedure, you have taken over my position and are the acting principal signed by all the principals and professors." Hearing Augustus's sincere words, Draco looked very excited. He never imagined that one day he would be able to sit as the headmaster of Hogwarts. In order to hide the excitement in his heart, Draco drank the red wine in the glass, trying to control his excitement with alcohol. Augusto lightly sipped the red wine in his glass, then continued to close his eyes and meditate, tapping his fingers on the table lightly. The thing to do now is to wait. As for the change of that chess piece, it is actually meaningless to the overall situation. After all, if the chess piece is not obedient, then it will not be a chess piece, but a discarded piece. That's all. About 30 minutes later, the prefects of the 4 colleges came to the auditorium to report on their work. Except for the 3 students of Gryffindor College, the rest of the students had been evacuated. After receiving the approval of Augustus and the guarantee that everyone will become the first batch of official members of the Saints Association after the next semester starts, all the prefects also evacuated the scene in an orderly manner. In the huge Hogwarts auditorium, only Draco and Augustus were left. After a period of mutual silence, the long-lost wait finally ushered in the result. Augustus finally felt a strong shock of magic power, and the other party really appeared in the secret room, and had already fought with the warrior trio. It seems that our fish have finally bit the bait. I hope they don't escape. The beginning of the new era will be the first act of the fall of the old era. As he spoke, Augustus stood up and tidied up his clothes. Today, he was wearing a standard 3-piece suit with a black tone all over his body. Even the bow tie was pure black. After all, to attend the funeral of a Dark Lord, one should still wear a formal attire. Thinking of this, Augustus couldn't help being excited, and the golden pupil in his left eye was ignited again, because of his strong fighting spirit. After arranging his clothes, Augustus drank the red wine in the principal's gold cup, and walked slowly out of the auditorium. After all, Voldemort, as an opponent, showed his unique IQ on a rare occasion. Of course, he must give the opponent enough time to experience the joy of succeeding in his scheme. If the other party can't taste the joy of victory, how can they understand how painful defeat will be? And while thinking about Augustus, he walked slowly towards the secret room. Walking around slowly, Augustus gradually approached the secret room on the 4th floor. The intensity of the magic shock was getting closer and closer, and a violent explosion could already be heard. It seemed that the other party had turned from embarrassment into anger. After all, his alchemy defensive props were not just talking. Even in the test with Professor Snape, his performance was extremely good. Voldemort, who has only a trace of remnant soul and is greatly weakened in strength, is still not that simple to break through the alchemy defense props. Moreover, judging by the nature of the magic power at the scene, it seemed that the 3 warriors were still fighting each other. Augustus had to sigh in his heart. Gryffindor courage, or stupidity. Those 3 warriors should understand the truth by this time. The opponent's goal is obviously not to kill themselves, but to have another purpose. And what should be done now? Call for help immediately. Try to attract the attention of other professors or students, instead of fighting with each other stupidly. It is simply stupid. Augustus, who was already standing at the door of the secret room, was closely waiting for one thing, that is, waiting for Voldemort's plan to succeed. After all, if the other party did not succeed, then his own affairs would also fail. After waiting for about 5 or 6 minutes, the sounds of fighting and explosions from the secret room gradually disappeared, replaced by the faint cry of a girl. Augustus knew that the other party had finally completed his plan. Pushing open the door of the secret room, through the unguarded trapdoor, Augustus walked to the depths of the secret room, passed through the various rooms that had been destroyed, and came to the last room of the secret room. Looking up, the whole room has been destroyed by the battle just now, and the thick traces of black magic around can basically confirm the identity of the other party. In the center of the room, Hermione was hugging Ron, crying sadly. Ron must have been hit by some kind of cursed black magic. His left arm became extremely black, and the blackness continued to spread. 2 alchemy necklaces that had lost their magical power lay quietly on the ground. Judging from the shape analysis of the necklaces, it was indeed a courageous Mr. Weasley who did not accept his kindness. Chapter 95 Going to the battlefield. Seeing Hermione who was still crying, and Ron whose life and death were unknown, Augustus expressed his emotional stability. After all, the other party committed suicide, so there is really no better way. Passing over the 2 people in front of him, Augustus began to search for something in the room. After all, the other party had captured Harry, and there were obviously traces of magic from the two people in the room. But Augustus knew that Voldemort would never allow others to hurt Harry. After all, in his eyes, there was only one person who could hurt Harry and kill Harry, and that was himself. Moreover, Harry has his mother's ancient magic protection, and Voldemort at this stage has nothing to do with him, so Harry is actually the safest. Voldemort just took a hostage that he can't hurt. And with the other party's paranoid and perverted personality, Voldemort must have left some clues in the room, and he definitely wanted Augustus to have a one-on-one decisive battle with him, in order to prove that he is not a waste who was defeated by minors twice, in order to satisfy his perverted stubbornness and persistence. Looking at Augustus, who was constantly looking for something in the room, Hermione said hastily with tears, "Augustus, hurry up and inform the principal. Professor Quirrell is Voldemort. He also has many dark wizards as helpers. He led a helper to capture Harry and injured Ron." Hearing Hermione's shout, Augustus turned his head, looked at Hermione, who was still crying, and said slightly mockingly, "Then what were you doing just now? It seems like I reminded you a month ago that there are bad guys lurking in Hogwarts, and I asked you to be more careful and notify me, or the professor, as soon as there is a problem." However, our brave Miss Beaver and her partners, relying on the courage that belongs to Gryffindor, dared to fight the powerful dark wizard, which is indeed worthy of praise. Of course, the most worthy of praise is our Mr. Weasley. For his own self-esteem, he can give up the favorable conditions he already has and fight directly with the opponent. It is really brave. Hermione's face was flushed by Augustus' words, and she, who has always been sensible and smart, of course understood that the three of herself had messed up the matter. But seeing Ron spreading injuries in her arms, Hermione still pleaded with Augustus, "I'm sorry, I know we made a mistake this time, but I beg you to save Ron. He will die if nothing is done." Facing Hermione's plea, Augustus said casually, "Then what do you think I'm looking for now? You don't really think I know all about black magic if the other party isn't arrogant enough to leave any solution. Then, Mr. Weasley, his fate has come to an end." Speaking of this, Hermione's face paled instantly, and only then did she realize how much trouble the three of them had caused. But upon hearing Augustus' words, Hermione still reacted quickly and said hastily, "Before those two villains left, they left a note and a gold coin behind you where Harry once stood." Hearing this, Augustus quickly turned his head, searched carefully on the ground, and soon found a gold coin and a note behind him. Unfold the note, and the content on the note reads as follows: "When you found this note, I have already left with Harry Potter. The gold coin next to it is a podkey. After entering the magic power, it will lead you to meet us alone. That ridiculous Gryffindor boy actually thought of attacking us. If Harry Potter hadn't thrown his magical necklace to him, he would be dead now. Of course, for your reputation and glory, I wrote down the solution to that simple curse here. For a genius like you, it should be very simple. It just needs to consume a huge amount of mana, but you have such a magical ring. I believe that the consumption of mana is meaningless to you. On the contrary, it will make our duel more fair. I hope to see you appear before 10 o'clock in the evening. We will always be waiting for you. Dear Mr. Augustus Dumbledore, leave a message, Voldemort." After reading the contents of the note and the complicated magic information underneath, Augustus couldn't help curling his lips. It seems that the other party's observations in the past few months have been somewhat effective. The other party unexpectedly discovered the special effect of his Ring of the God of Law, and hoped that by helping Ron, he would consume his magic power in advance. After reading the entire note, Augustus casually cast a fire spell to burn the note, and then said sarcastically, "What a mouse in the gutter. It's weird and stubborn, wanting a one-on-one duel with itself, but also as timid as a mouse, afraid of failing again. Is it just this kind of tolerance, Mr. Voldemort?" After finishing speaking, Augustus came to Hermione's side and said in a cold tone, "Put him down, Miss Granger. I hope through this incident you can understand that what you should pursue is a nobler purpose, rather than continue to stay with these people and carry out this boring and stupid courage game. This will be the last chance I will give him, and it will also be the last chance I will give you. Happy times are always short-lived, Miss Granger. The magic world will be full of ups and downs in the years to come. I hope you can use your ingenuity to meaningful things instead of wasting it indifferently. I hope you can be seen in the registration of the Saints Association next school year. Okay, put him on the ground, and I'm going to treat our brave Mr. Weasley. Facing Augustus' cold words, Hermione looked very sad. After all, until now, she still believed that what the three of them did was just a wrong method, and the purpose was still correct. But at this moment, Hermione also knew that the situation was urgent and did not argue with Augustus. She put Ron on the ground slowly and stood aside waiting for Augustus' treatment. With the full support of Mr. Voldemort, Augustus certainly mastered the solution to this curse, but facing the dead boy in front of him, Augustus still wanted to give him a little bit of pain. Augustus took out his Elder Wand and directly used the maximum magical power to suspend the boy in front of him in midair, completely wrapped in golden flames. The golden flame was burning violently. It would consume every ounce of magic power in the boy in front of him, and of course it would also consume all the curse magic attached to his body by Voldemort. Such a treatment process is of course effective. Ron made a chilling scream in the flames. He felt that every drop of blood and every cell in his body was being burned by the flames. The great pain woke him up from the coma, and he let out bursts of screams. The treatment lasted about 10 minutes. At this time, Ron's voice was completely hoarse, and he could no longer scream sound. Seeing that all traces of the curse on his body had completely disappeared, Augustus immediately withdrew the magic, and Ron, who was suspended in midair, fell heavily to the ground, but Augustus didn't bother to look at him again. He turned to Hermione. You help him to the Great Hall, where Draco will meet you, and he will take you to find Professor Snape. Now you should know that Professor Snape is definitely the most reliable person. He will ensure your safety, and ask Professor Snape to inform my lazy grandfather that, if you want to find traces of me, please closely observe the magic fluctuations on the entire planet at 10:30. I will release a magic that is enough to change the magical world, and can be felt by everyone on this planet. Of course, this also requires our Mr. Voldemort to be able to choose a good cemetery for himself. After finishing speaking, Augustus didn't bother to care about Ron's murderous eyes, and tapped the gold coin in front of him with his wand. After a space distortion, Augustus disappeared in place. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96, The Broken Wand. After a period of travel that seemed to be inside a compressed pipe and a burst of space distortion, Augustus felt that his feet had finally set foot on the ground again. The moment he landed, the bitter cold wind blew towards him crazily, and the thick snowflakes kept flying along with the storm, as if a thick curtain had been drawn between the heaven and the earth. Augustus quickly cast a constant temperature spell on his clothes, then took out a gold pocket watch from his pocket, wiped off the ice on the mirror, and checked that the current time was 9:50 in the evening. Then he took out a GPS locator. This locator was smuggled through Eastern Europe, and was originally distributed to the Red Empire Polar Scientific Expedition Team. But because the current era is too special, it was smuggled out, and in the hands of Augustus, he pressed the button of the instrument on the GPS, and Augusto finally learned the latitude and longitude of where he is now. After traveling for about 5 minutes, Augustus was actually transferred from England to the Antarctic continent. Looking at the white desert that was constantly swallowed by the wind and snow, Augustus couldn't help sighing. Sometimes it's really difficult to comment. Voldemort. Oh, it should be Mr. Tom Riddle. You are such a coward who is afraid of death. After sighing, Augustus put away all his things, took out his Elder Wand, raised it over his head, and then muttered silently. Magic barrier. Golden light gushed out from the top of the wand, quickly forming a circular protective cover in the air, isolating the biting cold wind outside, and the ever-eroding blizzard. The magic protective shield quickly centered on Augustus, covering a circular area of about 1 square kilometer around it. After the protective shield finally took shape, Augustus looked towards a dark place, and then said with disdain, Mr. Voldemort, is this how you welcome me? I have come here according to your invitation. Come out and meet me. As soon as the voice fell, there was enthusiastic applause from around. Professor Quirrell led 10 black-robed wizards who couldn't see their faces clearly through the light curtain of the snowstorm and magic defense cover and came to the inside of the defense cover. 11 people formed a circle and applauded Augustus enthusiastically as if they had just watched a wonderful performance. Facing the warm applause from the other party, Augustus bowed gracefully, then turned his head and said slowly to Professor Quirrell, "Professor, oh no, you should be called Voldemort, right? You've tried your best to plan all this and brought me to the end of this world, not just to watch my magic show. Stop talking nonsense. I don't think there is any relationship between us to talk about. Where is Harry? And as for the duel you asked for, I agreed." Regarding Augustus's speech, Professor Quirrell didn't show any expression on his face. He now looks like he is about to die with kidney deficiency, which makes people wonder how he came to this but a cold place. After a short silence, Professor Quirrell's head turned 180 degrees in an instant, and the crackling sound of broken bones echoed in the silent air, and an ugly face without a nose appeared in front of Augustus. "Of course, there must be my purpose in bringing you here. You should understand, after seeing this face, that the great Dark Lord has never been defeated. I'm back again. You are a member of Slytherin House. You have extraordinary talents and great ambitions. Now offer me eternal loyalty. I will forgive your previous disrespect and give you the way and means to eternal life." After seeing Augustus, Voldemort's distorted face immediately began to boast, but the distorted face made it impossible to tell whether he was excited or in pain. Voldemort's impassioned speech echoed in the air, while Augusto in front of him looked at him expressionlessly, his eyes full of disdain and sarcasm. After Mr. Voldemort finally finished his speech, Augustus continued to speak slowly and expressionlessly. "Have you finished? Let me repeat my purpose of coming here. You hand over Harry right away. I think your sudden increase in IQ should have discovered that you can't do any harm to Harry at this stage. I think with your perverted stubborn character, it's impossible for you to let others hurt Harry. Now hand over that person who is useless to you and state the terms of exchange. After everything is over, I will present the most magnificent funeral for your death with the most sincerity and the greatest ability. That's all." Facing Augustus's slightly mocking words, Voldemort's distorted face became even more distorted, and he said angrily, "Do you know what you rejected? You rejected the Dark Lord's kindness. You don't have to die here, and you even have the chance to live forever. But all of this disappeared because of your rejection. Your life will end here, and I will take your perfect body. Therefore, with a more perfect posture, I announce to the entire wizarding world that I, Voldemort, have returned." Facing Voldemort's excited words, Augustus couldn't help touching his face, thinking that his own charm is so great, and the ultimate goal of this pervert in front of him is to get his own body. Thinking of this, August could not help but shudder, and he said coldly, "Hurry up and hand over Harry. As for your perverted desires, I'm really speechless. I have to say that as the Dark Lord, your style of doing things and the logic of your behavior are really too stinking." Facing Augustus' ridicule, Voldemort was surprisingly calm this time. He waved his hand and signaled the people next to him to bring Harry over. The tall dark wizard next to him nodded silently and walked out of the magic barrier. Less than a minute later, he walked in again with a trembling girl with obvious frostbite all over her body. Looking at Harry, who was already shivering from the cold, Augustus couldn't help feeling a little sympathetic. Today, Harry was still dressed in women's clothing. It seemed that the other party still believed that Professor Snape was the biggest Black Hand. Harry, who was dressed in a summer short skirt and JK, was shivering at the end of the world. There were many purple blood spots all over his body. He must have been severely frostbitten. His long hair was covered with knots. "I got ice bumps. Tell me how to exchange it. After all, I promised my useless grandfather and a person who is always waiting to protect Harry. Now tell me your terms." Looking at Harry, who was about to fall at any time, Augustus continued to speak to Voldemort. "Your wand. Hand me that magic wand of yours, and I'll give you Harry back as soon as you hand it over." Hearing this, everyone present couldn't help looking at Voldemort. You must know that in the wizarding world, surrendering your wand means giving up your identity as a wizard. This is almost the greatest humiliation for a wizard. When Harry heard Voldemort's words, he reluctantly shook his head with the remaining strength. Augustus smiled at Harry and then threw the Elder Wand in his hand at Voldemort. Voldemort, who caught the wand, couldn't help but look it up and down, with strong greed in his eyes, and the strong reaction of the wand made him understand that he could not control this wand. So Voldemort held the wand in both hands, and then exerted force with both hands at the same time, only to hear a snap, and the Elder Wand broke in two. Then Voldemort put the broken wand in Harry's hand, and pushed her towards Augustus. Harry had to walk towards Augustus dangling with the broken wand. Chapter 97 Counterattack against the pervert. Seeing Harry who was dangling, and might fall down at any moment, Augustus hurriedly took off his black suit jacket, walked to Harry's side, and quickly put it on for her. The suit, which had been cast with a constant temperature spell, and possessed the residual body temperature of Augustus, made Harry feel warmer than ever before. His face, which had been blown pale by the cold wind, finally showed a trace of healthy rosiness. But looking at the broken wand in his hand, Harry still felt extremely regretful. Harry had to lower his head, not daring to look into Augustus' eyes, and then said in a very small voice, "I'm sorry, Augustus, we failed your kindness. We were too stupid, and brought you so much trouble. I'm really very sorry." Facing Harry who was about to cry, Augustus patted his head, and then said slowly, "I believe in you, Harry. You should be the most sensible one, and you are also the bravest one. If you didn't throw your alchemy necklace to Ron, then it will definitely not be you who was brought here. Of course, if that's the case, I may only be able to bring back a corpse. Your bravery saved a life, even if he is very annoying." Encouraged, Harry slowly raised his head, looking at Augustus, and asking with difficulty, "What about Ron? I know his behavior is very reckless this time, but there is no way he is my friend. Is he really alright, Mr. Augustus?" Augustus didn't answer Harry's question, just nodded slightly, then took out the gold coin from his pocket, and then said to Harry seriously, "After you pass this gold coin, you can return to the Hogwarts Chamber of Secrets. Professor Snape will wait for you there, and then you will follow Professor Snape to receive treatment. Don't worry, Professor Snape is definitely someone you can trust. He will guarantee your safety." Handing the broken wand to Augustus, and taking the gold coin from Augustus, looking at this ordinary gold galleon, Harry still asked in doubt, "Is Professor Snape really reliable? Why, even Voldemort said that Professor Snape was his most capable assistant, and he blocked a lot of trouble for him during his teaching at Hogwarts." Regarding Harry's question, Augustus could only touch his nose in embarrassment, but he still spoke very sincerely. "Don't pay attention to those details, Harry. You just need to know that in this world, only Professor Snape has no malice towards you. He is the one who cares about you the most." After finishing speaking, Augustus didn't want to answer any questions from Harry, so he directly tapped the galleon in Harry's hand with his own finger. After a space distortion, Harry disappeared in place. After sending Harry away, Augustus looked at the broken wand in his hand, and couldn't help but feel a pain in the flesh. He didn't know how many magic points he had to be sucked into by that stupid system to get his wand fix it. After putting the wand into the system space, Augustus took out 6 photo stones from his arms, which are similar to cameras in the magic world. As for why I took out 6, it was of course to be able to fully shoot the upcoming battle from multiple angles. After all, I have paid so much for this decisive battle, so it would be a pity not to shoot a 3D version. After waiting for Augustus to lift all the photo stones into the air, Augustus turned around slowly, looked at the double hole socket man in front of him, and said with a smile and mockery, "Mr. Voldemort, the heir of Slytherin, the most famous genius in the history of Hogwarts, the heir of Parseltongue, the greatest second-generation Dark Lord in the wizarding world, is that right? Oh, it should be like this. Mr. Tom Riddle, a half-wizard and muggle, the self-proclaimed heir of Slytherin, the second most famous genius in the history of Hogwarts, a genius who can't even go to a magic high school, conquered magical terrorists. Mudblood, Mr. Tom Riddle, everything I want to do has been done. Now let's start what we should do. Do you come one by one, or all together?" Facing Augustus' ridicule, Voldemort's distorted face appeared even more ferocious. Because of the cold weather, 2 streams of white gas spewed out from his huge nostrils, which looked very ridiculous. but the other party still adhered to the tradition of being afraid of death. I saw him waving his hand, and then gritted his teeth to the surrounding black wizards. Come on, he has consumed a lot of magic power now, and he has no wand. Give him a hard lesson, but you are absolutely not allowed to hurt his body, and it is absolutely not allowed to kill him. The task of killing him will be completed by me personally. Having said that, Voldemort paused for a moment, then turned his head, and said mockingly to Augustus, "After all, to Dumbledore, these people in front of you are just some appetizers. I believe that you, who are called Dumbledore's heir, should be very easy to deal with these guys. Come on, prove your strength, prove that you have the ability to challenge the Dark Lord." After speaking, Voldemort turned into a plume of black smoke and disappeared into the air with his trademark laughter. Augustus continued to stay in the center of the protective shield alone, scanned the 10 black wizards in front of him with his eyes, then took out his gold pocket watch from his pocket again, and looked at the current time. It is now 10 PM UK time, and he looked up at the sky again, and said indifferently to the 10 dark wizards in front of him, "Let's go together. After all, I don't have much time to play this boring game with you. I have already agreed with someone to have a huge magic show at 10:30. There is no need for foreplay. Let's get straight to the point." Facing Augustus' ridicule, the tall wizard who brought Harry looked very happy. He laughed loudly, as if no one else was there, and walked towards Augustus step by step. After coming to Augustus, he put one of his bare paws on Augustus's left shoulder, and then said to Augustus with a playful expression, "Did you froze your brain when you came here?" Looking at his skin and tender flesh, what a cute and delightful little boy. Don't worry, Uncle is not as rude as those people. Uncle is also from the UK. Although he said that taking people's money has to do things for others, but don't worry, Uncle will try his best to be gentle. Not only will he not make you feel pain, but he will even make you feel very uncomfortable happy. Facing the perverted speech of the other party, Augustus couldn't help but bow his head and fell silent, imagining whether he really came to the wrong place. This group of people in the British magic world are really fucking perverts. Seeing Augustus lower his head, the strong man in front of him seemed very excited, and he continued to speak teasingly. "Don't be shy, rest assured that you will be very happy, I will let you." Before he finished speaking, the strong man felt a sharp pain in his arm, and saw Augustus tightly holding the opponent's arm with his right hand. Then he raised his head suddenly, stared at the pervert in front of him with his shining golden pupils, and said word by word, "Shut up your filthy mouth, and let me remind you that I never allow others to take over my body, and all those who take over will pay for this unforgivable sin with their own lives." After finishing speaking, Augustus instilled magic power into his right hand, and with a sudden force, the opponent's thick arm was pinched and burst like a mature hot dog in an instant. The bones of the entire arm were shattered, the muscles and skin were all broken, and the blood gushed out like a flood that broke the embankment, but the other party hadn't had time to utter a scream. The entire face was hit again. After Augustus let go of the opponent's arm, he directly punched the opponent's face hard. The strength caused the opponent's entire face to sag, and the opponent didn't even have time to let out a scream, and the whole person flew upside down and smashed hard on the snow. At this time, the entire defensive cover was silent, only the wind and snow outside the light curtain was still roaring. Chapter 98. Lady Luck is smiling. It was as if the pause button had been pressed in the entire world, and all the 9 black wizards present turned their attention to the tall wizard who fell to the ground. Looking at the other party's arm, that seemed to be crushed by a hydraulic press, and the face, that seemed to be run over by a heavy truck, the corners of the eyes of everyone present couldn't help jumping wildly. People who dared to come to the end of the world to do such a thing would certainly not be a good person, but for everyone present, even if they led magical animals to attack the British Ministry of Magic, it was not as exciting as the scene in front of them. The tragic state of the tall wizard in front of him is really unsightly. After all, for people in the magic world, it only takes a small spell to kill the other party. It is unheard of to directly beat people like this. Just when everyone's eyes were on the wizard's corpse, Augustus had already disappeared and came to the edge of the entire protective shield. Then he took out two Colt Python revolvers that had been modified long ago from the system space, then loosened his bow tie and loaded 12 pistol bullets emitting a strange green light into the chamber. Then said with a smile, "Ladder Luck is smiling, Lady Luck is smiling." Then pour the magic power in his body into his whole body and activate his whole body to a superhuman state. Looking through Augustus' golden pupil, it seems that the whole world has been pressed in slow motion. Augustus could see the snowflakes outside the protective shield and the subtle movements of everyone's blinking. While the opponent was still in a dazed state, Augustus immediately raised two revolvers. The shooting speed has exceeded the human world record. Within 0.5 seconds, the three actions of raising the gun, aiming and shooting are completed, and the two revolvers spray out green flames. 12 pistol bullets modified by alchemy magic, dragged a long green light beam, and shot towards the 9 black wizards who were still in a daze. The 3 people who were directly facing Augustus only heard a violent gunshot suddenly. Before they could make any reaction in the future, 3 large caliber pistol bullets hit themselves on the head, chest, and their arms. One arm. The powerful kinetic energy and the rich magical energy inside the pistol bullet directly smashed the opponent's head like a watermelon. His arm was directly blown off, and a huge hole was opened in his chest. The 3 of them fell to death in an instant on the snow, with blood gushing out from the wounds, echoing the whiteness of the snow, forming a treacherous and miserable scene. A thin black wizard next to him reacted very quickly and directly cast an iron armor spell on himself, trying to block the bullets. Even though the other party's reaction was very quick, the splitting spell attached to the alchemy bullet still shattered the iron armor spell the moment it came into contact with the iron armor spell. However, the opponent seemed to have a lot of combat experience, so he just used this short 10th of a second to cast spells silently, and used Phantom to transfer to another place. The 3 bullets dragged the green light and hit the snow, splashing wisps of snow and smoke, followed by a violent explosion. The strong shock wave generated by the explosion reverberated around the entire protective shield, causing the remaining 6 dark wizards who had just reunited to almost fall again by accident. Seeing the embarrassment of the other party, Augustus smiled, gently blew the bursts of green smoke from the muzzle of the gun, then continued to reload with his head lowered, without raising his head. Said, "You'd better show some real skills. I've already reminded you that I'm in a hurry, and the time allocated to you is only about 10 minutes. Having said that, Augustus paused for a moment and flicked the 2 revolver magazines that had been filled, so that the magazines returned to their original positions. Crack. The sound of metal collisions echoed in the silent air. After completing this series of actions, Augustus slowly raised his head and stared at the people in front of him with his golden pupils that had begun to burn. Then he spoke slowly with words without any emotion. The big man just said something wrong. He said that I'm also from the UK, but he was wrong. In fact, according to the nationality law, I should be from the United States. So due to the lack of necessary props, I can't show you a colorful British magic show. But please don't leave in a hurry. Next, I will perform for you the intangible cultural heritage from the American continent and the world-renowned American Aijutsu. Of course, this performance still needs your help, and I will use your lives to complete this grand performance. After finishing speaking, Augustus touched the ring of the god of law in his hand and poured the magic power stored in it for many days into his body function. Then Augustus took out a cowboy hat from the system space, put it on his head lightly, then touched the brim of the cowboy hat slowly, then lowered the brim and said slowly, "Noon has arrived. Noon has arrived." The remaining 6 people on the opposite side, after experiencing all this, finally recovered from their stunned state. They quickly installed various protective spells on themselves, some of which had a higher energy density than others. Strong, the entity can almost be seen. After a series of defensive spells were installed, the 6 people quickly dispersed to form a fan-shaped encirclement, and then they took out their wands almost at the same time, and shouted almost at the same time, "Avada Kedavra, Avada Kedavra." 6 miserable green light beams hit Augustus at the same time. After all, money is of course very important to Augustus, but the most important thing is whether he can spend his life. Augustus' previous performance had already convinced them that if they couldn't kill the brat in front of them today, then people like themselves would probably die at the end of this world. Facing the 6 miserable green beams of death curse, Augustus smiled slightly and quickly switched from the posture of lowering the brim of his hat to the fighting state. Immediately raised the 2 Colt Python revolvers in front of him with both hands, and then pulled the trigger at a speed beyond the limit of human beings. Only 2 clear gunshots were heard, and 12 rounds of pistol bullets trailing green light fired at the 6 beams of light shoot out. And through the slow motion perspective of Augustus, on each abracadabra beam of light, there are 2 alchemy bullets going to meet the enemy, and the 2 alchemy bullets are fired at a time interval. So much so that after the previous bullet shattered a beam of the killing curse, the latter bullet still shot towards the opponent, who cast the spell at an unstoppable speed. Seeing that the Avada Kedavra was shattered by Muggle weapons, the Dark Wizards felt that their 3 views had been shattered. One of the Dark Wizards who reacted slowly after the alchemy bullet broke through his defensive magic, still nothing happened. The powerful alchemy bullet carried huge kinetic energy and strong magical energy, directly piercing through the opponent's chest, and opened a huge wound with a diameter of 40 centimeters on the opponent's upper body. Hot blood gushed out from the wound, so fast that the Black Wizard looked down at his wound, and then fell down on the snow with a puzzled expression. The other 5 Black Wizards learned the operation of the skinny Black Wizard just now, used alchemy bullets to break through the gap of defensive magic, and used apparition to escape. However, due to the hasty casting of the spell, one of them almost landed, face first when they landed. It was only because the snowflakes on the scene were thick enough that none of them suffered any serious injuries. Very embarrassed. However, the calm did not last long. Just after the remaining 5 people barely stood up, they heard the whisper of the demon again. As I said, please show your true abilities. If this continues, everyone present may not be able to last even 10 minutes. Chapter 99 Sudden Change. Hearing the devilish whisper, the remaining 5 Black Wizards couldn't help but look at each other, but soon the thin Black Wizard in the middle seemed to have thought of a solution. He made a gesture quietly, and the other 4 nodded quickly, then quickly dispersed, and took out a small stick from their arms. Then he held it uniformly in his left hand, and then began to mutter words. The magical energy began to gather in front of the stick, and when the spell was finished, a light shield that already had an entity appeared in front of the stick. Seeing the other party's series of strange operations, Augustus couldn't help but nodded, and then said slowly, alchemy magic, and it is a very mature alchemy magic. It cannot be mastered by those dark wizards who wander in the lawless land. This must be official equipment from a certain Ministry of Magic. The British Ministry of Magic must not have such a thing, or they should have taken it out when they were invaded by you. And according to the Ministry of Magic official named John, before they were invaded, many Auras lost their fighting power because of drinking tea containing potions. So you must be members of the Ministry of Magic of a certain country, and your official position must not be low. You must have entered the interior of the British Ministry of Magic in the name of a visit or something, thus implementing this plan. It seems that after this battle is over, I will go to the British Ministry of Magic to see if any senior officials from the Ministry of Magic have visited recently. After finishing speaking, Augustus stared straight at the 5 people in front of him. From the very beginning, when the thin wizard dodged his alchemy bullet at close range, Augustus had already begun to suspect that the other party was not just for a dark wizard who works for money. You must know that, although those black wizards have superb magic skills, they are absolutely impossible to have such rich combat experience. You must know that they are more like assassins lurking in the dark, while the 5 people on the opposite side are obviously more like systematically trained soldiers. The 5 people on the opposite side heard Augustus's words, and the 4 people holding the light shield couldn't help but look at the thin wizard, only to see that the other party applauded silently, and then said softly in their clear female voice, "You are indeed a genius, Mr. Dumbledore. Oh no, you should be called Mr. Grindelwald. You have almost guessed all our purposes. We joined that noseless team just for you, to investigate a case more than 40 years ago. Now we can be sure that you are the heir of the Dark Lord. Now we are going to arrest you and bring you to justice. Don't worry, you haven't done anything harmful. We mainly want your father to come and surrender himself, so don't worry, we will guarantee your absolute safety." After speaking, the other party immediately made a hands-on gesture, and the 4 wizards immediately inserted the light shields in their hands on the ground, and a powerful magic matrix was immediately formed. The defensive nature of this magic array is very powerful, already comparable to the magic defense array used by Augustus in the shooting range experiment. The magic matrix separated Augustus from the opponent, and formed an isolated light curtain on the periphery, completely separating the outside world from the inside. It seems that the opponent and Voldemort are not really in a cooperative relationship. After everything was finished, the 5 people on the opposite side immediately took out their wands, pointed at Augustus, and shouted loudly at the same time. Avada Kedavra, Avada Kedavra. 5 obviously thicker green rays attacked Augustus. It seems that the magic matrix not only has a defensive effect, but also has an effect on increasing the lethality of magic. Facing the 5 rays of Avada Kedavra, Augustus did not dare to neglect, and quickly used American Airijutsu to shoot 12 bullets in the gun chamber towards the opponent. Because the opponent has the enhancement effect of the magic matrix, this time 2 alchemy bullets barely smashed a killing curse light, as long as there are 2 remaining pistol bullets, dragging the long green light to the opponent's magic shield shoot. The magic shield that was hit only had a slight ripple, and the magic energy and kinetic energy rich in the alchemy bullet failed to penetrate the protection of the magic shield on the opposite side. Seeing this phenomenon, Augustus put the 2 pistols into the system space, looked coldly at the 5 people, who were still hiding in the magic matrix, and then said slowly, "If you tell me now, your identities, and the details of the so-called case more than 40 years ago, I can let you live." After finishing speaking, Augustus took out his gold pocket watch, and looked at it, only to find that 5 minutes had passed, and then continued. "After all, time is running out now, and I will give you about 1 minute to think about it." After finishing speaking, the skinny witch on the opposite side retorted loudly, "Now we have the advantage. This sentence should be for you. I said that, as long as you give up resistance, we will guarantee your absolute safety. After all, you didn't do anything illegal. Our target is only your sinful father." After finishing speaking, the witch directed the remaining 4 people to continue casting spells towards Augustus. Seeing the 5 green rays flying over, Augustus smiled, and then said slowly, "Even the officials of the Ministry of Magic only use this spell to kill people. This decadent magical world even has such a single way of killing people. It's really annoying to watch." Looking at Augustus, who was standing there, the 5 people on the opposite side felt a little unbelievable. You must know that the curse is Avada Kedavra, who is about to die, so there is someone standing still. Looking at the surprised expression of the other party, Augustus smiled, and saw that he suddenly raised his right hand, and the golden pupil of his left eye began to burn violently, and a strong aura covered the whole audience. At this moment, Augustus' lips moved slightly, and a simple word came out of his mouth. Combustion. After finishing speaking, the surrounding air seemed to start to stir, and the fire element covering the entire world began to become crazy. Under the surprised gazes of the 5 opponents, the seemingly unstoppable Avada Kedavra ray appeared. It started to burn violently, and a miserable green flame filled the entire protective cover, revealing a boundless breath of death. The magic matrix protective cover began to fluctuate violently, and the powerful magic energy continuously impacted on the protective cover itself, and the transparent protective cover was already covered with winding cracks. The violent burning lasted for more than a minute, and when the green flames dissipated, Augusto was only seen standing on the ground that had turned into solid ice, holding a strange metal and crystal weapon in his hand wand. Seeing the opponent's magical defense shield that was about to collapse, but still strong, Augustus couldn't help sighing. The alchemy magic you possess is indeed very strange. If it were normal, I would definitely be interested in fighting with you. But I'm very sorry. I'm really in a hurry today. In order to finally accomplish my goal, I have to send you on the road ahead of time. Of course, as the lady who refused to show her face said, I don't have any deep hatred with you, so I won't let you die in pain. But death is unavoidable. After all, in this cruel world, the best respect for the strong is to kill them all. After finishing speaking, Augustus used his red crystal wand to stroke his left hand lightly, and blood with a strange golden light flowed out from the wound. Augustus dripped blood on the crystal wand, which seemed to have received some kind of sacrificial power, and the red flame crystal began to roar. The metal wand body began to stretch without limit, and quickly changed from an ordinary wand to a staff taller than a person. The whole body of the staff is composed of two golden metals intertwined with each other. The top is inlaid with the bright red crystal, and behind the crystal is the image of a phoenix transformed from the metal. Holding the transformed staff, Augustus bowed slightly to the 5 people in front of him, and then said solemnly, "In order to express my respect, I will use the strongest magic I have mastered to send you on your way." Chapter 100 The Execution of the Throne. Hearing Augustus' words, the 5 people on the opposite side quickly took out various items from their arms, including rings, necklaces, bracelets and so on. Everyone was covered with all kinds of items, like vendors selling all kinds of gadgets in the streets and alleys. Augustus couldn't help but jump up his eyelids. Seeing the inhumane action on the opposite side, Augustus smiled contemptuously, and then said slowly, "Through your actions, I think I can roughly determine which country's Ministry of Magic officials you are. It seems that, after I left that so-called hometown for a year, there are still people who still miss me silently. However, I can tell you clearly that with the alchemy items in your hands, which can be regarded as excellent in the eyes of ordinary people, there is absolutely no way to stop the magic I will cast next. To be precise, it has no effect at all. After all, I will not wantonly destroy the environment here. This is a burial place that the noseless gentleman chose for himself. Before the other party is buried, it is really rude to smash the cemetery chosen by the other party." After finishing speaking, Augustus paused for a moment, tidied up his already somewhat messy clothes, and then thrust the staff in his hand onto the ground forcefully. The majestic magical energy gathered at the ruby at the top of the staff, and the image of the phoenix made of gold began to emit brilliant fire. Seeing this situation, the 5 people on the opposite side poured all their magic energy into those alchemy items, and all kinds of magic defense shields were superimposed on top of each other, covering the 5 people on the opposite side with a thick layer defense. Looking at the 5 people still hiding behind the magic shield, Augustus shook his head in disappointment, and then said slowly, "I thought this would be a fierce battle. I thought that, when you stepped into a desperate situation, you could burst out with your own courage. Then what you are doing now really disappoints me. As the top combatant in the magical world, you don't even have the courage to stand up and resist. It's a corrupt and dirty world. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, since you refused my request, I will sentence you to death at the end of this world. Feel the wrath of Rab." After finishing speaking, Augustus pulled out the staff stuck on the ground and lifted it directly above his head. The ruby at the top of the staff immediately emitted a radiance like the sun. The light was so dazzling and impossible to see directly that everyone present closed their eyes. However, the imaginary violent explosion and the pain of burning flames did not come, and the 5 people hiding behind the magic defense shield only felt a little hot. But they still didn't dare to open their eyes. After all, they could really feel the terrifying magical energy. It wasn't until the sweat on their heads soaked their eyelashes that the 5 barely opened their eyes. But everything in front of them made them feel unbelievable. The yellow sand all over the sky and the bitter sun were announcing that they had left Antarctica and came to a barren yellow sand hell. Just when the 5 people looked at each other in puzzlement, suddenly the ground under their feet began to tremble, and the sound of the dying horn pierced the silent sky. Countless warriors riding white horses and carrying scimitars appeared at the end of the sky, and countless red flags embroidered with phoenixes were connected together, so that people looked from afar, as if in this world full of yellow sand, there appeared a red tsunami. With the sound of passionate music and thrilling drums, those boundless warriors immediately separated along crack. With a huge panting sound, a giant throne pulled by thousands of slaves appeared in front of the 5 people. Looking at the scene in front of them, all 5 people had expressions of hell. Just now they were at the end of the world, fighting against the wind, snow and cold, but in an instant they seemed to have traveled through time, space, and regions. Came to this ancient land full of yellow sand, surrounded by a huge army that traveled through time and space. But the reality didn't give them time to think. With a dull bang, the giant throne that required thousands of people to pull it had already arrived in front of them. The Thin Witch among the 5 people set up an awning and looked up against the glare of the sun. Sure enough, she saw that familiar figure on top of this huge building. On this small pyramid-like building, Augustus sat calmly on the golden throne, holding the phoenix staff in his left hand, and looked at the 5 people under the throne with his cold eyes. People, I've already told you that your alchemy defensive magic is meaningless in front of this spell. If the lady in front of you has a little bit of knowledge, she should be able to understand what kind of situation you are in now. In this magical realm, if you are killed here, you will also die in the real world. Of course, I will give you a chance to survive. Either hand over that secret, or the 5 of you will fight 5 of my warriors. Of course you won't be able to use wands, but your magic power will be preserved for the sake of fairness. Make your choice now, whether you are going to give up your secrets, or fall under the blade of the warrior, in this world of spirit and magic, and be buried forever in the yellow sand. Augustus, who was on the golden throne, held the phoenix staff in his hand, looked at the 5 people under the throne and announced loudly. After listening to Augustus' words, the 5 people under the throne looked at each other. After a moment of silence, the Thin Witch in the middle spoke loudly to Augustus. We choose to fight. The voice echoed in this barren world, and Augustus, who was sitting on the throne, couldn't help but feel a little surprised. He must know that anyone who enters such a strange field will lose the fear buried deep in his heart be aroused. This is also the reason why Augustus didn't kill them directly. After all, he wanted to find out their secrets, but it is clear that the intimidation has lost its effect now. After a moment of silence, Augustus on the throne waved his hand, and the 5 people under the throne quickly obtained excellent armor and cold swords. Of course, since the real world didn't reveal their black robes, Augustus still couldn't see each other's true face, even if they were wearing exposed armor, but Augustus still said in the most sincere words, "Your choice is beyond my expectation. Maybe in this strange field, the fear buried deep in my heart has finally been replaced with anger and courage. Give you weapons and armor for your bravery, and let my warriors dismount to fight with you. The conditions remain the same. You retain your magic power. As long as you can defeat 100 warriors, I will give you freedom and let you go." After finishing speaking, Augustus stood up from the golden throne, facing his vast army, and shouted loudly, "My brave warriors, cheer for the courage of the warriors I have chosen, and the enemy facing you. Kill them, my warriors, and fight for your own honor and the courage of the opponent." After saying that, the tsunami-like army uttered a thunderous battle cry, and 100 gold-armored warriors standing next to the throne immediately got off their horses, and drew out their own sharp blades that still radiated cold light under the harsh sun. Shouting the name of Augustus, the lord of the god of Ra whom he believed in, he rushed towards the 5 people on the opposite side in an unstoppable formation. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.